have a quorum, and the deputy inspector from the Midtown South Precinct is here, and our second presentation is here. Just give me a moment while we bring up the live stream.
Yep.
A quorum, and the
All right.
okay. You're all
Ready to go?
You're ready to go.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April meeting for the Manhattan Community Board 4. We are hosts. I am the chair, Lowell Kern. We're hosting this meeting via Zoom because the governor said we could, and everyone hasn't been vaccinated yet. I want to make one quick announcement. If you are a member of the public and you wish to speak during the public session, please make sure you sign up now. The link has been published with the agenda on our website for a week now. So there's really no excuse. If you wanted to speak during the public session, raise your hand and Jesse will add you to the list. Otherwise, you will not be allowed to speak during the public session.
Sorry, well, just for clarity's sake, the sign up had been cut off at 5 p.m. today. If you would like to speak during the public session and you did not sign up, once the public session starts, our first Vice Chair Jeffrey LeFrancois will start it. You can raise your virtual hand and we will mark you down as wanting to speak. We will cut that time off after about a minute. So anybody after a minute who has not signed up and has not raised their virtual hand, we will not be taking them out.
So you don't want them now, you want them after Jeffrey goes to the public session.
Yes, exactly. We cut the sign up sheet up at 5 p.m.
I stand corrected. In any case, we have a presentation. As most of you who are regulars here know, we've been rotating through the commanding officers of the 4 precincts that touch Community Board 4. And tonight we are having a presentation from the CO of Midtown South. Deputy Inspector O'Hare, if you're ready.
Good evening, everybody. How's everybody this evening?
All right, floor is yours, sir.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. And I have my team here over my right shoulder, Eddie McDonald from Community Affairs, as well as Brian Kelly from Community Affairs. Just wanted to thank you for the invite. It's been a long night and going back into evening time again tonight in Midtown South. I'm sure everyone's well aware of the incident we had on 8th Avenue last night. I am very happy to report that some fantastic police work was done by the members assigned to the Midnight Patrol in Midtown South Precinct, as well as investigating officers assigned to the Midtown Precinct Detective Squad. Roughly before 10 o'clock this morning, we took our shooter into custody. All right, so very unfortunate circumstance, but was quickly remedied with an arrest. This individual is known to us. We also dropped an arrest number on him for an incident back on February 21st involving a robbery along the 8th Avenue corridor. He is presently down at Manhattan Central Booking awaiting arraignment, which will likely happen at some point later tonight and or tomorrow. So I just want to give the community an assurance that, notwithstanding what's going on out there, and I'm sure I've been hearing a lot of concerns for safety, and I fully understand it. And the members of the Midtown Precinct, Midtown South Precinct are here. We take these events serious. We pulled out everything that we could possibly do, and thankfully we had a very quick resolution to this, and hopefully this leads to some sort of we'll go through the criminal justice process at this point, and hopefully down the road we do yield a conviction, which I'm fairly confident that will happen, but I don't want to prejudge any judge or jury. But just rest assured that the men and women of this command, as well as other commands that I've had the privilege of working in, keeping our communities safe is certainly paramount, and it's not taken lightly by any stretch of the imagination. So Midtown South has had its challenges now in the last year. Certainly at this point, if we rewind the clock to last year, this is we're still in the early stages of the COVID shutdown last year. Our crime is trending not in the right direction that I'd like to see it go. And I've mentioned this before. When I talk numbers, they're not numbers. These are people, these are victims behind this number. And I think sometimes it just gets may fall by the wayside. But rest assured, I'm very cognizant, as well as my staff, that these are victims, unfortunately, that consist of these numbers. So if we're looking right now, the year-to-date robberies, we're up 56 robberies, 92 over 36. We're up 104 over 36 felony assaults. We're up 100 burglaries versus 46 burglaries last year. Those are what's really driving the crime. We measure in the police department by 28 days and 56-day intervals, and sometimes we'll go longer or shorter. We follow the trends, and we try to deploy where the crime is happening in real time. We don't wait. If those of us who remember years ago, a crime book came out once a year, and that's how it was reflective of how police were deployed a long time ago. And we haven't done that in a long time. I'm very happy to say in the 28-day of the 33 robberies, 57% are closed to arrest. Felony assaults for the 28-day, 40. There's 40 felony assaults, 80% are closed to arrest. All right, the men and women are doing the work. It's not only members of of Midtown South Precinct. We've had members of our critical response team, as well as our partners in law enforcement in the Port Authority Police Department, as well as Amtrak and MTA. They're kicking in. They understand the obligation that we have, and they are our partners in crime fighting. We're certainly looking at, to get these numbers. And again, it's victims. We want to correct this stem. I think everyone is well aware of the terrible and horrific incident that happened last week involving a 65-year-old Filipino woman who was on her way to church. That was fantastic work, but done by patrol, and then immediately handed off to Hate Crimes Task Force. And the CEO of the Hate Crimes Task Force, Inspector Corey, credited that quick patrol's response to that and obtaining video that we were able to get that out there to all members of the public. And we immediately started getting information of who this individual was. I'm sure everyone's aware that individual is now in custody, and that will go through the criminal justice system. But obviously, if anyone that saw that video, it was pretty nerve-wracking, pretty horrific. I mean, very violent. And, that's not something that we would wish to see ever repeated again, because, there's a victim there. And I'm sure, once her wounds heal, I think that hurt, and that day in time will live with her, and as it does with many victims, they don't forget. So what we're looking to do here is every week we're redeploying. I take a look at my resources, where the crime is happening, what resources I can put out there to try to combat it. The intel sharing is let me rewind the clock. I got here back in September. We tweaked out a couple things here, and a couple things we've brought here have yielded to these very quick identifications and or apprehensions. So that if I can get someone off the street within hours as opposed to days, that's keeping this community safe. All right, the less time they spend on the street, the less time for them to repeat their offenses and take advantage of other potential victims. So it's really all I have at this point. Jesse, I thank you for the invite, and I thank everybody. And rest assured, listen, members of Midtown South are here for you. We're looking to work with you. We want to keep this community safe. And I say to people all the time, and then some people get it, you live here, you have a business interest here. Well, guess what? We live here too. I'm living here now about 15 hours, give or take, today and tomorrow. We live here too, and we see the problems, and we're looking to work with everyone to try to resolve those problems. I think everyone understands This has been a difficult year in policing. Some of the tools in our toolbox have been taken away. Some of our tasks or responsibilities have been reassigned to other agencies, and I'll let you form your own opinion on the response to those. I see Joe Rustica there. I know you certainly have a good opinion. Him and I shared on a meeting earlier today. But Jesse, I'll turn it over to you. If anyone has any questions that they'd like, or I'll do my best to certainly answer them. And please always feel free to contact not only my community affairs officers, but my NCOs. I'm sure everyone at this point is well aware of the NCO philosophy and the officers that are assigned, and they obtain their information on the website, the Build-A-Block websites. And please don't hesitate to tell us. One of the always frustrating things I have is when someone asks a question and it starts off generally like this, Inspector, for the past 6 months, and I just go, oh, they waited 6 months to tell us about this. Some things we can resolve, some things we can work with other people, but please don't keep that problem, to yourself for 6 months. Get us involved and let us actively try to assist and resolve that problem. Why should you have to live with that problem for 6 months? Tell us about it. Let's see what we can do to get it work. Let's find some sort of resolution for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there anyone on the board who has a question for Inspector O'Hare? Dale, are you signaling you have a question?
I am, yes. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Inspector. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
I just want to mention that your precinct is partially in our district and partially in another district. And we're on record as wanting to have coterminous police precincts with the community district. I just want to raise one issue, which is there's been like an ongoing issue with 35th Street being obstructed by police vehicles. And lately it's crept onto 9th Avenue, and especially the travel lanes and the bus stop on 9th Avenue. So can you curtail that?
This is something I'm cognizant of. It's something, it's a difficult situation. I wish I could speak more fluently on it. I have one of my staff members who knows the amount of parking spots that we have lost for our department vehicles is pretty significant over the last couple of years. We need vehicles to respond to emergencies and do our patrol. I'm trying to curtail that to the best I can, but eventually, and plus with some of the construction that was going on here on our precinct block itself, eventually you do run out of space. That's something I'm cognizant of. We try to be good neighbors as best as we can, but sometimes we literally run out of real estate. I'm sorry, but that's a real reality answer, but it's something that what we can do. We actually even have people taking our spots on 36th Street, and we're trying to get corrected. We need to put our vehicles someplace, and we're trying to keep our vehicles somewhat close to the station house. In the events of the last year, continuing, I have an email from earlier today. Our vehicles are being sabotaged by outside bad actors, if you will. We saw the events of last year, so we also need to keep our vehicles in close proximity to keep an eye on them, that they're not physically damaged. We've had explosives placed on the vehicles. We've had brake lines manipulated, lug nuts removed from vehicles. Really dangerous, scary situations, if they're not caught in the right time, could certainly lead to a tragic accident, not only for my officers, but certainly for the members of the public who are either pedestrians, bicyclists, or driving another motorist when you're manipulating brake lines on police vehicles.
Sir, I recognize the challenges, and I appreciate that you brought up the incidents like that. I wonder if there's an ongoing investigation of those incidents. And also, I think especially the bus stop is problematic because it forces passengers on the public bus system to disembark in the street, and some of them are elderly or suffer from disabilities. and that's causing a hazard. So, and some of the vehicles are also frankly not officially placarded. They just have notes in the windshield. So I would say the abuse that's happening in the bus stop really needs to stop.
I'll have my integrity control officers take a look at that, and I'll take a look at it when I go outside also. As far as like some of them not putting their official placards, folks, some of my cops are scared to put those plaques in the window because of the intentional damage that is done to their, when they come out of work after a day and they find their entire car is keyed, a tire is slashed or two. That's a reality that has happened.
I've got a follow up here, Inspector. When we're talking about placards, you're talking about your officers and your staff, their personal vehicles, right?
These are their personal vehicles, and then there's personal vehicles, and there's also department vehicles.
Okay, the department vehicles, I understand. Dale is co-chair of our transportation committee. So what I was thinking while he was asking that question is, can we get more of your officers to take public transportation so we don't have to worry about their personal vehicles?
How are we going to do that?
Subways.
Even not here in Midtown South, I can tell you a significant portion of my officers do take public transportation. Obviously, our close proximity to Grand Central Terminal, the path, as well as certainly Penn Station around the corner.
Right.
I don't think we could start regulating how police officers respond to work. Keep in mind, some of them keep very strange hours and,
Understood. Understood. I'm not asking to regulate. I'm just saying if there is a problem with parking though, near the station house, and there are problems with, these guys are worried, and I believe me, I understand. They're concerned about their personal vehicles. That would seem to me to be a way to resolve it, but I'm just spitballing here. Joe Restuccia has a question for you.
Yes, Inspector Hare, just to echo Dale's concern there, I think the real big issue is the bus stop on 35th and 9th, because it simply is, like I mentioned earlier, I have a lot of senior citizens between the 9th and 10th, and they get off that bus and they literally are somewhat disabled. They cannot get to the bus stop. So if you can just make extra attention to that, so folks don't park a police vehicle or private vehicle there, that is something we need to have happen. I really appreciate it.
We will put that. I will put that out there, and I will have myself, my staff, as well as my integrity control officers start monitoring that, and we'll get the message out to the cops. I certainly understand on the bus stop for sure.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Inspector O'Hare. We appreciate your time. We've got a full agenda, so I'm going to move on. Any of these issues that have come up, Jesse can follow up with the precinct. And if any member of the public has any questions or needs to follow up, they can go through the board office and we can reach out to the precinct on your behalf. Thank you again, sir, for all the work you do and for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a safe evening and stay well.
All right, we're going to move on. We have another presentation that's kind of related to this from the Office of Preventing Hate Crime. And I'm not sure who we have here. We have Eunice, I think, and I'm not sure who else. So I'm going to turn the floor over to them and we can move on with the presentation from the Office of Preventing Hate Crime.
Yes, hello. I'm not sure our executive director was supposed to join us, but I think she's having some difficulty. Deborah,
I brought her over. I'm not sure. I brought her over, Eunice. I'm not sure if she didn't come over, but she was in the public session, the attendee section. I did bring her over.
Right. I'm not hearing her. I think she was also having some difficulties with her video and camera.
Okay.
And while we wait on that, I'm going to just share my screen. Thank you everyone for your patience. We always have these tech difficulties whenever we have one of these calls. It's pretty unpredictable. So she is going to see if she can try and join again. As we do that, I think we can just kind of get started on our presentation. We really value your time and you being here today. So hello everyone, my name is Eunice and I am a program manager at the Office for the Prevention of Hate Crimes. So if you ever get confused about our acronym, I'm going to be using OPHC for our office's name. And it's going to be very handily on the bottom right, just for your reference. So I will be referring to us as OPHC from now on. And just to begin, I wanted to give some context about who we are and where we came from. So our office is fairly new. We're only about 2 years old now. And we were really created in response to a rise in hate crimes in around 2018 to 2019, specifically anti-Semitic crimes. So our city officials and legislators really saw the need to create an office that would bring together all the different city agencies, community-based organizations that are doing this work, and to make sure everyone is speaking to one another and really sharing best practices and how we can move forward in the prevention as well as response to hate crimes in the city. So how we do that, so we have two networks that I'm going to be talking about specifically. The first is our Interagency Committee on Hate Crimes. So this is our network of city partners. So we currently have 18 different city agencies on our IAC, as well as all 5 district attorneys' offices. So we also have split our IAC into 5 specific working groups. So that is our education working group, neighborhood safety and community relations, victim support, restorative justice, and strategies to enhance incident reporting. So as you can see on this list, we have a variety of different city agencies really representing all walks and parts of life in New York City. We also have a parallel network called our Community Advisory and Services Team, and that is our network of community-based organizations. So I believe we have almost 30 of these organizations in this network currently, and they perform a very similar function in that we bring all of these community-based organizations and direct service providers together to really talk about what's going on the ground, how can we do things better and more effectively as a city, and what we're just seeing in all different types of communities, because New York is very diverse, we have a lot of different voices, and we want to make sure that we're hearing all of them. So as you can see on the top of the slide, I'm kind of going into our 3-pillar approach. So we work with community relations, as I just mentioned, and the second is going to be education. This is a very, very important part of our work. We do a lot of work with youth as well as the Department of Education, and something we're proud of, and we're happy to announce is our hate crimes curriculum. So we'll be, fingers crossed, releasing this in, and this is engaging educators and students as well as their families on issues related to hate crimes, discrimination, and bias, the history of hate crimes legislation laws, how to address online hate and discrimination, everything you can think of, even scenarios. So we're proud of this, so we're very excited to release this and share that with you all soon. Our last pillar is laws and law enforcement. So we are not an investigative agency. However, we do work very closely with the NYPD Hate Crimes Task Force, and we are keeping abreast of all these different incidents as well as these troubling trends that we're seeing throughout the city. Another thing that I wanted to highlight is just our violent hate crime notification. So you may have received one of these in your inboxes in the course of your work. And basically, we're mandated by law to send notifications whenever a violent hate crime has been determined. And that is to legislative officials, to community boards, to community-based organizations with incident information, such as when it happened, where it happened, and how we were responding. So we've gone through a few slides, but I wanted to make sure that we are all on the same page in terms of what I mean when I say hate crime. So this is a definition that's adapted from the New York State Penal Law. So I'm just going to read it out for everyone. So a hate crime is a personal or property-based offense that is motivated in whole or substantial part by bias towards a person's, a group's, or a place's perceived or actual identification with a particular identity. So this is a very dense definition. There's a lot there. But basically, if we just boil it down to two main elements, the first is some kind of proven bias motivation, and the second has to be some sort of criminal element, so a crime. So when you have those two things, that can now be determined a hate crime. So we also want to note on this slide that hate crimes are taken very seriously here in New York State, and they are subject to enhanced penalties. So what that means is, let's say we have an assault, and let's say the sentence for that was like 5 years. So that assault is investigated if there's some indication of that it was motivated by bias. So the NYPD Hate Crimes Task Force is going to look into it. Once they're like, yes, this is a hate crime, then that original sentence, which may have been 5 years, could now potentially be something like 8 years, for instance. So I also mentioned bias motivation. So if we are going to break that down into specifically what is protected currently through the New York State Penal Law, we have race and color, national origin and ancestry, gender and gender identity or expression, sexual orientation, religion and religious practice, age, which is 60 and above, and disability. So what do I do if I experience a hate crime, I'm targeted for one, or if I witness one? So I think we should all be pretty familiar with the first two, so I'm not going to go over it in too much depth. But if it is an emergency, you can call 911 for assistance. And you can also reach out to your local precinct or local district attorney's office to report a crime. And the last is something that I also wanted to highlight, but New York City offers a program that stations each precinct with advocates that can provide support such as referrals to mental health assistance, financial help, etc. And this is available to people in all different languages, and you do not have to have made a police report officially to receive assistance. So these advocates are throughout all the precincts throughout the city, and they're available, again, in multiple languages, free and confidential services, and you do not need to have made an official police report. And I also wanted to wrap up with a few of our resources that we've released. So we have our website, that is the go-to. It has more information about everything that we covered in today's presentation, as well as our annual report, which was just released, which kind of gives an overview of what our office has been doing. And I also wanted to highlight just a few of our resources from our website, and I'm also able to drop this in the chat later. But the first is our What is a Hate Crime 2-pager. So I've said a lot about hate crimes, and it can really take many forms, but we boiled it down to a few different examples and scenarios and what you can do in these instances. And we also talk about what is known as a bias incident. So that provides some examples, and this resource is available currently in 10 languages, and we're looking to expand that even more. And the second is our section on COVID-19 resources. So the first is also a really handy one-pager on what a hate crime is, how you can receive immigration assistance or mental health support, as well as information for the Crime Victim Assistance Program, which are the advocates that I mentioned earlier. So this is also available currently in 10 languages, and we're looking to expand this as well. And the second is a partnership with the Department of Education. So I mentioned that our education initiatives are very important to us. And this resource was released last year in the beginning of the pandemic to support educators and students and families that were having these conversations around race and bias and discrimination, particularly related to the pandemic. So we actually re-released this for this year, and I'm happy to announce that the Department of Education has made this available to educators with some more resources and some more support available in that area as well. And lastly, we have our Interagency Stop Asian Hate Toolkit. So that has multimedia and has little like bystander information. It has a lot of great pictures and images if you want to share that out on social media. It has a lot of great resources that are available throughout several various agencies throughout New York City. So I just also wanted to throw that plug in as well. And lastly, I'm going to open up to any questions. And I'm also going to just leave off on this information. I'm happy to answer any questions that you aren't comfortable sharing directly tonight. And I will leave my email in the chat as well. And we have our general email on this slide. And hopefully this was helpful. Thank you so much for having us here today. And I'm looking forward to taking some questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board? Go ahead, Jessica.
Hi, thanks, Lowell, and hi, Eunice. I actually had the opportunity to hear you present. You presented to me and my colleagues at my council a couple of weeks ago, and you had a slide that included specific data related to hate crimes. And I was wondering, I don't think that was in this presentation, maybe I missed it, but I was wondering if you could share that back. And I think it's good to see broadly, but also I'm sure people would be interested in seeing it, if not for our district, then for Manhattan, broken out by borough at least or something, not as if we aren't concerned about the issue citywide, but it would be helpful to see.
Yeah, Jessica, thank you so much. You actually flagged that and we revisited the slide, and we wanted to actually also update it for 2021 because we're like, first of all, this is outdated. Second of all, these percentages are kind of confusing. So we are going to provide that information. I'm happy to connect with you. And we're also thinking of reframing it as well because I mentioned that we send out our violent hate crime notifications. So we thought that it would be really helpful to see an overview of how many we've sent out, in which boroughs, for what kinds of crimes. So we're revamping that, and hopefully we'll have this presentation soon.
Thank you.
Sabrina?
It was actually the same question, just the data breakdown. Thank you.
Katie?
I just had a question. We're very interested in doing bystander training, and just wondered if you had any if those resources are available or if you recommend any. That's it.
Yeah, for sure. Those are great. I've attended a few facilitated by the City Commission on Human Rights, our sister agency, CCHR, in partnership with Hollaback, as well as the Center for Anti-Violence Education. I think there's really different strengths to each of these, and I would suggest people doing them with their friends and family, whatever fits their schedule. And I'm happy to send over a link to that, as well as some other resources, whatever you're interested in. But yeah, I would definitely check out those three, I would say.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Eunice? Eunice, thank you very much for the presentation and for the
You
work.
have,
you do. What?
Lowell, you have one member from the public with their
That
hand raised.
hand has been up the entire time, Jesse. I'm not sure what that question is for.
I don't,
Andrew's, no, all right, they're new hands up. I see that now.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, the new hand.
Well, all right, it's just Andrew.
No, I think there's a
Nope.
there's a different photo for the person. I don't think it's Andrew.
All right.
The person who was titled Andrew, Kunkus, do you have a question for the speaker?
Oh, so, hi, this is Deborah Lauder. I'm the director for the office. I'm so sorry I had technical difficulties. Andrew sent me his link. I don't think you can all see me, but I think Eunice did a fantastic job giving you an overview. I think it's fantastic that your community board is focusing on these issues today. In terms of the data, just so you know, when the office got started, as Eunice said, it was because of that spike in anti-Semitic incidents. Last year, the numbers went way down. In 2020, there was a 37% decrease in hate crimes in New York City. We think it was because people are quarantining, not much, people in the subway systems and whatnot. Right now, the numbers are starting to tick up again, and they are driven by the anti-Asian biases. So we're very concerned about it, and a lot of the work that we're doing through this interagency committee that you saw is specifically focused on how to address it. So as Eunice said, we have been putting out lots of resources. We urge you to take advantage of them, and the more that we can get people involved. This is this office was established because our city officials, the mayor, recognize that there needs to be a long-term approach to how do we fight hate. And that's what we are. We are a staff of 7, and we're determined to work with all of you to make things better. Because as you see, when one incident can impact not just that individual, but the entire city, entire communities. So we're taking every single one seriously and trying to do something about it. So thank you again for the opportunity. I'm sorry not to be able to participate fully today.
Well, thank you very much. We do appreciate your making it, even if your name isn't Andrew. You threw us off for a loop, Deborah. But thank you again for coming, to both of you. Thank you for our questions, and thank you for answering our questions and the suggestion about the bystander training units. And we appreciate you coming tonight. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good night.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on. As we've been doing for close to a year now, we're going to go to the public session next, because it's important that our elected officials who are here hear what the public has to say. So I'm going to turn this over to our first vice chair, Jeffrey LeFrancois.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jeffrey LeFrancois. As Lowell said, I'm the first vice chair, and I'll be running the public session this evening. As Jesse stated earlier, if you have not already signed up to speak, please raise your hand now. I will add you to our list, and we'll take it from there. Jay, just so you know, you're already on the list. Lisa, you're on the list, so we're doing well. Jennifer, I will add you. To start, please, let's bring over Jolie Golden, Jay Lee, and then Monica Fogg, please.
Jolie is coming over now.
Great. And just so folks know, you'll have 2 minutes to speak on a topic of your choosing. And as always, we appreciate if somebody has already spoken on the topic and you have nothing new to add, to just echo the sentiments of your neighbor or colleague. Jolie, are you here?
I am, and thank you so much. And I am a partnership specialist from the U.S. Census Bureau, and I've had the pleasure of working with Community Board 4 for the past 2 years. I just want to share a couple of pieces of information. First of all, as of April 30th, apportionment counts will be released. So that will determine the number of representatives in New York State for the next 10 years. So that data is coming your way. If you look on census.gov, Jesse, can I share my screen here or not?
Yeah, give me one. Yes, I can. Give me one moment.
Okay,
I'll just do it just for you, Jolie.
just for me.
You can do it. Go ahead.
Let's see, here we go. Okay, so I'm going
You're
to
not
take
sharing it,
us,
so you know. There we go.
there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna just show you a couple of things. The first thing is, if you wanna know more about apportionment on census.gov, there is this super cool apportionment map. And you can see not just where we stand as of 2010, but you will see after April 30th, probably either on or after April 30th, this will update and the 2020 tab will come up. And we'll see if we still have 27 representatives or not. This is an awesome feature for anyone who is historically oriented. You can go to any of these decades and see how many representatives we had, how many people per representative, and where things are trending. You can see here Florida and Texas had gained seats in the last decade, and we expect them to gain seats again. Moving on to the second topic, which is our data summits. So we have wonderful webinars coming up that are led by people from our census headquarters, experts in certain types of data, including there's one coming up on, this is where you can find them. I'll send the link to Jesse. He can send these out. You can easily register, except for this first one tomorrow that's sold out. But if you look here, from statistics in schools to COVID-19 hub demographic and economic resources, there's a lot of great stuff here. I know that Jesse was also working on something with our data dissemination specialist just for Community Board 4 members.
You could wrap up, Julie. Thank you.
Sure. Last thing is, anyone affiliated with a school, I have awesome free census maps. They're 3x4 foot wall maps. They're free. If you don't request them this week, they come in boxes of 50, they'll be gone. So I'm just letting you know that, and that's all for now. Thank you very much, Community Board 4.
Thank you. Jay Lee, followed by Monica Fogg, and then Joseph Henney.
Jay Lee, be over.
Okay.
Hi,
Yep.
can you? Hi, so my name is Jay Lee, and I'm a member of Hack Manhattan, which is a local makerspace located on 14th Street and 7th Avenue. We've been open since 2011, and basically providing a public STEM resource. We're essentially a workshop, and you can kind of see what we have: 3D printers, machine shop in the corner back there. We have a laser cutter and electronic soldering workbench. The idea was basically unlike suburban garages, which are plenty, New York City real estate obviously is tight and we have a limited amount of space. So a couple of us got together and decided to buy equipment and allow the public to use it. We used to host public nights every week on Tuesdays where people can come in and work on things, whether it was programming, 3D modeling, building, creating, even software development. Obviously with the pandemic, we kind of had to cease operations. Additionally, on top of that, the building that we've been calling home for the last 10 years or so is currently in the process of being sold because of them losing the anchor tenant. So this is me coming onto the here, just asking if anyone has any resources or is aware of any place that could essentially support us. We 900 square feet and a place that has windows for commercial use. That's something we'd be interested in. And if anyone is aware of any grants and things as well, that would possibly give us the financial backing to do it. We've taught classes here. You know, we've provided free resources and experience from a lot of our members who are engineers. We have around 30 or so members currently. And yeah, if you guys, if anyone would like to learn more, my contact information is here. Oops, there it is. And yeah, feel free to check us out on any of our social media. We are Hack Manhattan. And thank you for your time. I think you're muted, sir.
Jeffrey, you're muted.
I am, sorry. If you want to drop your contact in the chat for panelists and attendees, feel free. Up next, Monica Fogg, Joseph Henney, and then Daniel Rosemarin.
I actually, Monica Fogg is an issue that I and Carl Wilson have been working on, so I think that's been resolved.
Great, we love that.
I don't believe Joseph Henney, Daniel, Elena, John Stewart are here. The next person I have who I brought over was Michael Stegman.
Then we'll go to Michael and then Marnie Halassa. Michael?
Hi.
Hi, nice to see you.
You too, albeit virtually. I'll be brief. My name is Michael Steigman. I'm the operations manager for Down to Earth Farmers Markets. We run the farmers market on Saturdays on 23rd Street between 8th and 9th Avenues. We are reopening again, so please save the date. I'm going to share my screen really briefly, if that's all right. Oh, may I? Would that be okay?
Oh, yeah, give me 1 second, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Go for it.
Thank you so much. So here is our flyer. We are open May 15th through December 18th. Every Saturday on that block, we'll have local fruits, vegetables, meats, fish, everything in between. We also have a pre-order option through the What's Good app in case you would like to pre-order any items from the farmers market. This is a new venture that we're exploring due to COVID-19 restrictions, social distancing, etc. And finally, we are hiring as well. So if you'd like to see, we are hiring for the Chelsea Farmers Market too, and those job descriptions are available at our website, downtoearthmarkets.com. And that's all I've got. Just good news.
Thanks, Michael. Let's see, up next, Marnie Halassa, followed by Kristen Hackett and Ann Santori.
Oh, hi, can you guys hear me?
Hi, Marnie, go ahead, you have your two.
Okay, sure. So I just wanted to come and talk to you guys because I listened to the meeting regarding, the working group last Monday. Just for background, I work with the Fulton tenants and Elliott Chelsea and other activists to stop the demolition of 2 buildings at Fulton houses. So it was a collective group effort with tenants and activists and other groups. We did a lot of work, a lot of protests, a lot of town halls, filed lawsuits, called the media. And because of all of that, we were able to stop the demolition of the 2 buildings, which was, I think, if that were not to have happened, it would have probably set a dangerous precedent, throughout the entire city. But just to be clear, the tenants, I just want to, make this very, very clear to everybody that the tenants do not want any RED or any privatization. They've been protesting for basically 2 years. They have 363 petition signatures against RED. I feel like I'm saying this over and over again. And the one thing that I'd like to say is that the idea that the tenant protections follow them and that they are quote unquote, I think the word that was used was enshrined is simply not true. After a development converts to RED, the tenants lose their protections at the federal monitor and the court settlement. And also like what's happening now, when there's non-payment of rent, some of the RED landlords are starting eviction proceedings within 14 days. So I think that's really bad. But also Chris Nickel from Senator Jackson's office said in the working group meeting that only 10% to 20% of tenants were engaged. So to me, that's really an admission that the tenants are not really informed or cognizant that RED is even happening. So again, there was a lot of self-congratulatory,
15 seconds.
Yeah. So I just wanted to tell everybody at the board, that the tenants don't want it. And I think it's going to be a horrible thing if it goes through. So thank you.
Thanks, Marnie. Let's see here, lost my screen. Kristen Hackett, Ann Santori, and then Lisa Wager. Is Kristen here?
Yep. Hi, everybody. Good evening.
Go
My name
ahead.
is Kristen Hackett. I'm a community organizer with the Justice for All Coalition, and I'm here tonight in support of residents at Fulton Houses who approached us in the fall for support. The community board here participated in the Chelsea Working Group, which discussed and crafted plans for the future of Fulton houses. And tonight I'm here to implore you to step back from that plan and publicly denounce it before an RFP can be circulated. The working group is now being promoted as a great collaborative model that brought in experts from many different groups and sectors around the city. But in truth, the working group process is highly undemocratic and has effectively cut tenants out of having a say in the future of their homes. If the process were democratic, it would have to take seriously the majority petition signed by more than 600 heads of household at Fulton houses, which opposes RAD, infill, the selling of air rights, and the transference of properties from Section 9 to Section 8. Instead, it has ignored this petition along with irregular rallies and protests that were orchestrated by tenants and which have been widely covered in the media. At best, this working group model assembles a group of mostly outsiders, people who don't live in these buildings and communities, to discuss and plan their future in lieu of tenants themselves. To contestations that there was tenant involvement, so far there have been two main tenant advocates, the TA president, Miguel Acevedo, and Hector Vasquez. From other residents who participated on the working group, I know that many of the other 20 were not in favor of the plans or did not participate fully in the process. I also know that 3 tenants that did participate but strongly opposed the plans were left off the list in the final report. At any rate, that's somewhere between 2 and 20 residents in favor of the plan versus more than 600 opposed. Not only is this undemocratic, but this power dynamic is colonial in nature. A group of predominantly white outsiders formed a committee to decide the future of homes and land where predominantly Black and brown immigrant households reside. This continues very dangerous historical processes of oppression that you guys are participating in. But you have a decision. You can decide to stand with your neighbors who live in Fulton houses who have adamantly opposed this plan.
Thanks, Kristen.
For 2 years.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Anne, followed by Lisa Wager, and then Susan Peters.
Hi, everybody. You've seen me before. I'm always talking about the same thing, which is the quality of life and crime in our neighborhood in the West 30s. It's improved vastly because of the relocation of the shelter, which actually inadvertently was the cause of the disaster that happened last week. However, I'm here tonight to ask you, and I actually meant to have my comment go to the captain who was on the call earlier. We are now looking at better weather, and we have already seen at what is euphemistically called the canoe park. That's the little park when the the Lincoln Tunnel exits onto Dyer Avenue. I believe it's controlled by the Port Authority, is already filling up with homeless people, drug dealers, and we just see the beginnings of this happening as it was happening for months and months last year. So I'm putting a plea in, I don't know to whom, to keep that little park. They removed the furniture. There's no way that the community residents can use it, even though it's a lovely park, but it's already becoming a dangerous spot. And I wrote in my question on the chat, I'm hoping at one point, because there were so many problems last year, there was actually a police vehicle parked on 9th Avenue at the park just before the tunnel entrance. The cars go to the west, and there's room for a police vehicle in the evening. Would make a big difference for the heroin dealers' activity, because everyone's used to going there to be injected in the evenings. And that park is a very dangerous place. So thank you for my plea, and you'll pass it on to those who know more than I. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. Lisa Wager, Susan Peters, and Jennifer Malacott.
Hi, my name is Lisa Wager. I'm the Director of Government Community Relations at the Fashion Institute of Technology. Hi, Jeffrey. The SUNY College on 27th between 7th and 8th. I'd like to share that FIT is hosting its 15th annual Sustainable Business and Design Conference. This year it's called Changemakers in Action. It's taking place April 13th through 16th. It's open to the public as usual. And this year, of course, it will be virtual. Once you register, the digital event will be available through April 22nd, which is Earth Day. The conference program will spotlight leadership in social justice, diversity, corporate responsibility, and innovation in the fashion industry. The keynote lineup includes Eileen Fisher, Dr. Mark Liu, who's a pioneer in zero waste fashion design, and FIT alum Stacy Flynn, who's co-founder and CEO of Evernew, and many others. Students, faculty, and industry leaders and entrepreneurs from FIT and many other institutions will come together to learn about emerging trends, network with peers, and share innovative solutions for a sustainable future. I hope some of you will come and the public will come. You can find the conference registration information on the FIT website. I dropped it in the chat. I have 40 seconds left. So here's a fun thing. What did some of the more memorable looks at last month's Grammy Awards have in common? Beyonce's leather mini dress and Noah Cyrus's quote unquote meme-inducing whipped cream cloud. They were both designed by FIT alum Daniel Rosenberry, who is now the creative director at Maison Schiaparelli. And you may remember he also designed Gaga's fabulous giant gown in which she performed at President Biden's January inauguration. Thank you. Happy spring. It's nice to be able to get outdoors. See you next month.
Thank you, Lisa. Always good to hear those fashion tidbits.
Like you need them, Jeffrey.
Making me blush on my last two speakers. Jennifer Malacott, followed by Mary McGee.
Hi, I am just gonna tell you about two things that happened this afternoon on my dog's walk. So I live in Chelsea at 21st Street and 8th Avenue. I think a lot of you know that, even though I'm unhappy that everybody knows that I live here. But I took my two dogs, Bowie and Jeannie, out for a walk this evening at around 5 o'clock before this meeting started. I came across Little John, that's his name. He's a drug dealer, and he was selling crack to another guy on the stoop at around 323 21st Street. I don't know exactly where, but there's a building. So they were like hanging out, and I said, hey guys, can you please not do this because PS 11 is about to get out of school. Like, let's not do this. So I had a full-on conversation with these two, a drug dealer plus somebody that was buying drugs. Is everybody listening? Can I get an amen? Is everybody listening? No. Yeah?
Amen.
Yes, I think people are listening.
Seriously. So I stopped and I had a conversation with them, and I said, can you please not do this on this stoop because you're directly across from PS 11. They're about to get out of their after school program, and I don't want the kids to see this. So I had a conversation. The guy's name is Little John, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. So then I walked down the street, and there was three 17-year-old boys. I won't say their names. I'll say they're like Tim, Jack, and
15 seconds, Jen.
Okay. So listen, they were smoking crack. Three like 16-year-old boys were smoking crack that they probably got from the guys down the street. And I asked them if they wanted to do drugs. Ask their parents for THC, like ask their parents for alcohol. Don't buy drugs off the street.
Thank you. Susan Peters, followed by Mary McGee.
Hello, can you hear me?
All yours, Susan.
Yeah, you can hear me, yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm a member of New Yorkers for Wiretech, and we're trying to inform community boards about the real health issue that's coming across, because within our city, the government has allowed the implementation of 8,000 wireless antennas on corners in New York City, and there are 4,000 more coming. And recently, Mayor DeBlasio issued reams of paper congratulating New York City for closing the digital divide. Euphoric, no mention of the health issue. There is not one smidgen of talk about reviewing the health danger from this huge increase in radiation on our streets. And the same disregard is exhibited by the FCC in Washington. Their standard of guarding health for wireless radiation goes back to 1996. How many of you have had a cell phone in your hand in 1996? The New York State Legislature, however, is voicing real concern. Bills have been introduced into the New York State Senate and Assembly to establish a special commission to investigate the growing evidence linking exposure to microwave radiation with serious human health and environmental impacts. Please, today we are exposed to 100 million to 10 billion times more radiation than our grandparents. And this radiation has been shown to have biological harm in thousands of peer-reviewed studies. Children are even more vulnerable. Please read the information on my website. It's just the top of a huge belly of proof over the last 20 to 30 years of the damage that is being done.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Our last speaker for the evening is Mary Mcgee. Mary?
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Mary Mcgee. I am a resident at Fulton Houses. I just have a question. I was at a resident meeting and this was brought up and I'm like, yes, then what happened? President Biden signed off and Congress and all the elected officials on the $2.3 trillion budget, and $40 billion is to be allocated to public housing as a whole. NYCHA's gonna get a big chunk of that because it's the largest public housing there is in the United States. So then, if more money is allocated for NYCHA, why do we have to go RAD? Why is there a need to proceed with this process if we are? And why, if NYCHA still proceeds with RAD, they no longer need $40 billion. Will that money be allocated for, since NYCHA is going private? Those are my questions and concerns, and I would, hope to get a response somehow. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. That is the end of our public session. As Jesse announced and I reiterated at the start of our public session, hands had to be up at the start. And so that exhausts our list. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I turn it back to you for the remainder of our agenda.
Okay, speaking of the agenda, let's adopt one. Does anyone have any questions about this evening's agenda? Seeing
Move
none,
to adopt.
Their motion. Jeffrey?
Move to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Al, thank you. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone not voting for any reason? Thank you. Last month's minutes. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adopt.
Is there a second? Thank you. Thank you, Katie. All those in favor? Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Elzara, were you saying yay or nay? Elzara?
Yay.
Okay, thank you. Anyone not voting for any reason? All right, the minutes are adopted. We would normally move to our borough president's report now, but our borough president has graciously agreed to hold off because we have not one but two members of Congress with us tonight. I'm going to start with the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Representative Gerald Nadler. Mr. Nadler, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be with all of you this evening. As you know, President Biden signed the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan back in March. This historic bill contains many measures that are already beginning to help Americans across the country. The American Rescue Plan provides a third round of $1,400 stimulus payments. It provides Social Security and other federal beneficiaries should begin seeing their direct deposits and/or mail checks this week. It extends unemployment insurance, pandemic unemployment assistance, and federal supplemental benefits through September 6th. It cuts child poverty in half by expanding the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit. It bolsters housing assistance through an additional $21.5 billion in emergency rental assistance on top of the $25 billion that was secured in December for renters currently struggling to pay rent or who are not up to date on their rent payments because of the pandemic. In New York State, these funds will be administered through the Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance. It provides $1.25 billion in additional funding for the shuttered venue operators grants. The Small Business Administration, the SBA, will begin accepting applications tomorrow. Applications and eligibility information can be found on the SBA website. It provides $25 billion for a newly created program offering up to $10 million in direct grants to restaurants and other food service establishments. The eligibility requirements and updates about when the program will come online are not yet available, but will be posted on the SBA website. It includes funding to expand the Affordable Care Act for the first time since that act was enacted 11 years ago. It delivers much needed funds to state and local governments, including $24 billion for New York. The next phase of the administration's Build Back Better plan is the American Jobs Plan, which was released last week. This ambitious $2 trillion plan would contain robust funds necessary to overhaul the country's crumbling infrastructure. It includes $621 billion for fixing highways, bridges, upgrading ports and airports, and another $85 billion for modernizing existing transit systems. Climate change, as you know, poses a looming threat to our infrastructure systems, something New Yorkers know only too well as we continue to deal with the long-term devastation from Hurricane Sandy. I helped lead the effort to push the administration to ensure that large-scale climate resiliency and flood protection investments were included in this package. Among many other provisions, the infrastructure bill also includes investing $40 billion to address longstanding public housing capital needs and improve the infrastructure of the public housing system across the country. Investing $100 billion to upgrade and build new public schools to ensure that the schools are safe and healthy places for our kids, teachers, and educational staff. Investing in workforce development and creating the jobs of the future, creating jobs and raising wages for essential home care workers, addressing historical racial inequities by providing better jobs and better transportation options to underserved communities. As we get more information about this infrastructure package, my office will make sure to update the community board. Lastly, I wanted to highlight a few other pieces of legislation that I'm working on, which may be of interest. I am fighting for the SALT Deductibility Act, which seeks to restore the full state and local tax deduction on taxpayers' federal income tax returns. Indeed, I am circulating a letter for signature by the entire New York delegation that says we will not vote for the package at all unless there is a total restoration of the SALT deduction. You know, the SALT deduction stops double taxation. It's been in the income tax, it's part of the income tax system since the income tax system was first adopted back in 1913 and was only limited by the Trump tax bill 4 years ago. And it's about time that we got it back and got back to normal and equitable principles of taxation. I reintroduced the African Burial Ground International Memorial Museum and Education Center Act, which would establish a museum and education center at the African Burial Ground in Lower Manhattan, because establishing a museum is an important part of our ongoing fight for equality and justice in the country. We can't successfully fight for equality without a clear understanding of the history of slavery and sharing the untold stories of those who helped build New York City in the face of unbearable hardships, determination, and of course, exploitation. And I reintroduced, along with Nydia Velasquez, the Improving Helicopter Safety Act that would impose much stricter regulations on helicopter flights in New York. In fact, it would ban helicopter flights over New York, except for safety-related flights like medical and police flights. And I expect my bill on my Pregnant Workers Fairness Act to prevent discrimination in employment against pregnant women to pass the Ed and Labor Committee next week. I don't want to take too much of your time, so I'll leave it there. More detailed information about any of this can be found on my website or by calling my office, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, let's start with Chris LeBron. Chris. All right, let's move on. Mike Noble was next.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you,
Sorry
Congressman.
about that. I'll wait after Mike. Mike, sorry. I just
Yeah.
need to unlock my phone.
Go ahead, yeah, let Mike go first, and I'll come back to you, Chris.
Yeah, hi. Okay, Congressman, I saw in your newsletter how under the American Rescue Plan, you noted that the unemployment taxation exemption of $10,000, is part of that federal level. Can you tell me why New York is among only 13 other states in the country that hasn't followed that? You've got 6 of them all in the South, and you've got New York and Massachusetts up here. I mean, I don't understand.
I'm surprised to hear that. I would have thought that New York would not be one of the few holdout states, but for that, you'd have to talk to one of the state legislators because they're involved in that.
Okay, well, I thought you might have more clout than I do. Anyway.
Well, I will certainly talk to them too, but if you want to know about it, you should talk to the legislators. I'll certainly weigh in and tell them I think this is ridiculous.
Okay, thank you.
Chris?
Yes, hi. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Chair. I really do appreciate this. This question is related to infrastructure. How can I say this best? I'm wary of changing housing from Section 9 to Section 8. Can we assure that public housing throughout the country, not just the city, will get the proper budgeting necessary to bring it back up to code?
Well, there's a lot of money in the bill for public housing, but a lot of the decisions will be made locally. I must say I don't share the distrust of the RAD proposal. I think it can be worked out well. We've had a task force of the local elected officials, myself, Brad Hoylman, Corey Johnson.
Congressman, just for context, I was included at one point for a year in those conversations in my work in city council. My question was related to Richie Torres's request for more funding, so that way we don't lose a lot of housing to Section 8.
We'll certainly support Richie Torres's request for more funding. And Nydia Velasquez and I introduced the bill to provide an additional $72 billion.
Okay, so moving forward for at least fiscal year 22, fiscal year 23, we can expect you to support increased funding in supporting the preservation of Section 9 housing in New York City and the expansion of it.
Sure. Absolutely.
Thank you, Congressman.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Dolores, you're up.
My question was also housing related. I think Congressman Nadler, you started to answer it. You were saying that you think RAD can work. I'm only asking the question because a member of our public was asking a specific question about with the new budget passed by this administration, that specifically allocating money for public housing, whether or not any of that money is specifically earmarked for New York City public housing, and whether or not some of that money can offset or allay some of the fears people have around RAD when applicable to apply to their.
Well, a lot of that money certainly is specifically allocated. I couldn't tell the amount off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Lowell, you're on mute.
Yep. Thank you, Congressman Nadler. Appreciate your time this evening. I'm going to move next to your colleague, the chair of
thank you.
The chair of the Oversight and Reform Committee, who has been waiting patiently for me to get to her, Carolyn Maloney.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'm delighted to be with you. And my report is very similar to Jerry's. The big news is the $1.9 trillion that I never thought I'd be able to vote and be part of such an important addition to the city of New York. I now chair the Oversight Committee, and the portion of the bill, over $356 billion, went through my committee, and it was funds going directly to cities, states, tribes, and territories. It was one of the most contentious parts. The Republicans did not want to give money to cities and states. It held up the budget earlier for many times, but we got over 5.9 billion directly to the city of New York for what their priorities are, and over 12 billion to the state of New York. Overall, it's roughly $100 billion coming to our great city and state. It's desperately needed. We were the epicenter of the virus, and we need this money desperately. I am a former teacher, and I was particularly thrilled to see so much money going into education, just hundreds of millions of dollars for education. And I worked with the mayor and council member Kalos to direct part of their monies to providing K3, 3K throughout all of Manhattan. There were some sections of Manhattan, I think Harlem had it, and Brooklyn and some other areas, but we got the agreement from the mayor that this will open up for 3-year-olds. This is so important for their development, making them better prepared for life, but also for the parents. Over 11 million women lost their jobs during the pandemic, 9 million men, and many of them lost their jobs because they had to stay home with their children and became the teachers to their children. So this funding is tremendously important, and I'm proud of being part of the team that made it happen. On helicopters, I have authored this bill for many, many years, had many, many meetings on it. And with the FAA, what they say is their role is to increase helicopters, therefore they're not helpful at all. So I'm working with the chairman of the Transportation Committee to have our non-essential flights over the city of New York added to that bill. We wrote the bill that it only applied to cities over 1 million. So that includes New York City, which is a very, very important part of it. I passed a bill. It was one of the last bills that passed. It was a National Women's Museum on the Mall. I thought that we needed one. I thought it would be easy to do. It took me 20 years to pass it. It's now law. We're going forward. There will be a museum on the mall, hopefully across from the African American Museum. And they are requesting an advisory committee. So if any of you would like to be a member, or you want to see someone from the community that you think would be good for that, then I certainly would champion their application to be on that advisory committee. Tomorrow, I'm introducing a bill that would forgive the loans for frontline workers in the healthcare. I think I support it for all of the students that are burdened with these terrible loans that make it impossible for them to really go forward with their life. But particularly healthcare workers, I hope we can pass it and provide a bridge. We had a difficult time during the pandemic getting the workers that we needed. We had many come in from other states. We had many students stop their education and just go right into the medical field. They've been there for us. Many of them became sick and died. Many were sick and have suffered greatly. So the least we can do for those that took care of us is to take care of them. So I'm introducing that tomorrow with the nurses, the AMA, a lot of the medical establishment. Up on my website will be all the information. I don't want to run through numbers and allocations because my colleague and friend Jerry Nadler has already done that. But I do want to point out some more things on the 2.2 trillion that we're talking about for the next step, which would be infrastructure funding. And that is a very, very important part. I am pushing one thing that's very much tied to the Green New Deal, and that is turning our entire fleet of trucks with the post office to electric, and gearing all of our postal centers across our nation with plug-ins so that the public can go there to plug in with electric cars. That's a big, huge movement forward. I'm also pushing in this package high-speed rail between New York and Boston. Analysts have said nothing would grow our economy more and more quickly. I think it is horrible that we don't have high-speed rail, and I intend to work very hard to make that happen. but I am proud of having built the only subway, not only in New York City, New York State, but the entire country with federal funds since I've been in office, and that's the Second Avenue subway. And we are pushing in this plan to go up to 125th Street. We built the first track between 96th Street and 62nd Street. We now need to go up to 125th Street and give this benefit to East Harlem and to Harlem to help the quality of life and economic growth there. We intend to build it full bill all the way down to the tip of Manhattan. I worked very hard to get funding for community health centers, and in my committee in my district, we got over 4 million for the floating hospital, 2 million and for the care for the homeless in Manhattan, 2.2 million. The Community Health Network in Manhattan, 9 million, and the New York City and Health and Hospitals Corporation received over 24 million of that funding for our community health centers. As we respond to the pandemic, we know that the people that are there providing the services oftentimes are not only just the big hospitals, but the community centers serving our community. We have not completed the whole bill for the infrastructure. So if you have an idea of where you would like monies to go, I did get 3 modernizations for subways in the Brooklyn area of my district, but in the area of my district, if there are modernization of subway entrances, I'd like to work with the community board to get that as part of the MTA and also the infrastructure package. I want to talk just 2 seconds on NYCHA. I agree with the speakers on NYCHA, and I am proud of having pushed for really ever since I got to Congress. Very briefly, when I was on the city council, when we made repairs, the repairs were done from the development in the community. Now it's centralized and no one gets anything repaired. They'll get billions of dollars and no one can get anything repaired. I go to my developments and everybody's furious about it. So we have a model project taking place in 3 projects that are in my Queens area of my district. I'm pushing hard and they are open to possibly advancing that citywide. I also support the Green New Deal for public housing, that when we make these repairs, we have a lot of people out of gas. I know if you have some in your developments, but all across the city. So let's just convert them to electric now. And as we upgrade to green standards that are modern, better for the residents and better for the community as a whole. I am thrilled that we have a Democratic president who is pushing all these good changes. It's very refreshing to have $1.9 trillion going out to people in need, to children, education, homelessness, you name it. And now the infrastructure package. I see some hands up, so I will now yield back and take any questions you may have. And instead of repeating what Chairman Nadler just said, I was going to say the same thing about what monies are going, but I just talked about other initiatives I'm working on instead. But I welcome your comments and your instructions and your questions.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Representative Maloney. David Warren, you had your hand up first.
Hi, good evening, Congresswoman Maloney. It's always great to see you.
Great to see you, David.
Thank you again for what you did with the Zaroga bill and the subways. And I look forward to watching you at the ribbon cutting of the Women's Museum. My question, you mentioned a Green New Deal, which is great. I need you to work your magic again. And that is to get federal funding for protected bike lanes that's connectivity, not just a random protected bike lane, especially commuters, and the access lanes to the bridges would be great. Whether it's even though it might be a tad out of your district, the Williamsburg and Brooklyn and Manhattan bridges, but also you also have the 59th Street Bridge in your district. But all throughout the city, because a Green New Deal, if people would commute by cycling, that would create a better environment for the whole world. If we can have something like, if you can get us something like Amsterdam through funding, that would be a miracle. So look forward to working with you with that.
Okay,
And thank
David,
you.
you know more about it than I do. So I'll work with you on that proposal, and I'll try to get in, and I'll work very, very hard. I can't promise I can do it, but I can promise I'll work very, very hard. I do want to follow up on one thing you said when you talked about the Zadroga bill, which gave health and compensation to the heroes and heroines of 9/11. That bill is now an entitlement. I am more proud of that bill than almost anything I've done. And I want to share with you that I've put in a similar bill for the frontline workers of the COVID crisis, because they also have the health conditions and the financial stress and loss of life that we had after 9/11. And this includes everyone who was on the front line, whether it was postal workers or transit workers, sanitation workers, obviously the health and hospital workers and our community health centers, but it would cover them and I think be critically important. And I'm not going to rest till I get that bill passed. So thank you for mentioning my 9/11 work, and I yield back.
Keep up the great work, and I know you can get our protected bike lanes. I know you'll do it.
Let's work together to do it.
Thank you, David. Brad Pascarella.
Hi, good evening, Congresswoman. Real quick, infrastructure. We just were presented with a Penn Station plan that was so lacking in forward thinking. It was shocking. And one thing I just think I would like to put to your team is thinking of the future. And the future is drones and drone delivery. We've got so much traffic in this city. We're on the west side. We were a shipping magnet at one point. We need to be looking at alternatives to bring in goods and services to the community. So I'd like to point that out. I know we're talking about helicopters, but to me, it's like when they were putting blips on top of the World Trade Center. I mean, what's the big tall building there?
Empire.
Yes. And they were just behind the times. So that's all I'd like to say, and thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Brad. And I am aware of the questions that the community board has raised. I think they should be listened to and totally explored. And I support the community board. Thank you. I yield back.
Christine. You're on mute, Christine.
We can't hear you, Christine.
Christine, you're on mute.
Getting there. Thank you for the ideas you are bringing of the postal service being electric. I think there is a step that could be done before that, is to really figure how many trucks they really need. In our district, every time there is a post office, we are overwhelmed with trucks, which are parking everywhere, and it's not clear that all these trucks are full. The second part is that, just like Amazon has done, the post office could use a lot of bike delivery to do their job instead of trucks. So I'm happy that whatever truck is left is electric, but I think they need to rationalize the way they are doing deliveries right now and pick up, and reduce the number of trucks they have.
Well, I think that's a very important point. And if you'll work with me in my office on where these trucks are blocking and sitting on the roads and causing problems to the community, I will bring that to the attention and go and meet with the post office, the regional director here and in Washington, about how we can reduce the number of trucks out on the street. As you know, most mail is delivered walking. They walk around and deliver it. But I think bikes are another good idea, but you got to make sure they know how to ride a bike. And so anyway, I'll raise that with them too. But really the trucks are used primarily, or should be, they're used to go and pick up the mail from offices and take it to the sorting areas and then deliver it, vastly across the country. And I'll talk to them and see if we can get a plan on being more efficient about picking up so that you don't have so many trucks out on the street that
Right.
aren't full, as you said.
Right.
But those are
Thank
good
you.
items, and I will work on them, and my office and I will be contacting you. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Maloney. We do appreciate your time and for joining us this evening. I have to cut this off here because we've still got a lot of agenda to get through, but we do appreciate your joining us this evening and for all of your hard work. All right, we're going to move on now to our illustrious Borough President, Madam Gail Brewer. Gail, you here? There you are. Okay.
I'm here.
It's yours, Gail.
Do you want to do something special first or just give my report?
Let's do something special first. We've
Okay.
got a special treat tonight.
Yes, we do. So should I go ahead or do you want to?
Go right ahead. This one's yours.
All right. Well, I am very, very honored to talk about somebody whom we've known for a long time, Mr. Martin Treat. And although we don't have the opportunity to give him the proclamation in person, I feel terrible, Martin, that we can't do that. And I don't even have something that I can virtually hand to you. But I want to say today we're going to recognize you and honor you. You are a remarkable individual. You're a Vietnam War veteran, just like my husband, actually. You're an actor, you're a playwright, you're a community activist, you're an advocate for the disabled, and a member of Community Board 4. And what it says is, whereas for the honorable and meritorious performance of your duty as a specialist in the Army Air Cavalry during the Vietnam War, Martin Treat received service, commendation, and air medals. Returning from Vietnam in 1970, he dedicated himself to his community, both in his professional life and in his volunteer activities. And as we all know, he worked tirelessly to ensure greater community involvement and participation and to encourage consensus building to further the community's goals. That is Martin Treat as far as I'm concerned. He received an MFA in acting from the University of Oregon, became an actor, performing in countless theater, television, and film productions, and a theater arts teacher, working for many, many years in our public schools. He's the founder of the Clinton Hell's Kitchen Coalition for Pedestrian Safety, and he has been a tireless advocate for pedestrian safety in his neighborhood, known citywide. And whereas deeply affected by his service in Vietnam, Martin Treat has been a longtime member of Vietnam Veterans Against the War and Veterans for Peace, just like my husband. And in 2003, Martin Treat wrote a one-man play based on the columns of renowned World War II war correspondent Ernie Pyle. And that play performed across the United States. Martin Treat has consistently fought for the rights and needs of veterans, as well as for peace and social and economic justice for everyone. And whereas for his deep and abiding commitment and service to his country and his community, Martin Treat was elected to the New York State Veterans Hall of Fame. My husband was not elected to the Veterans Hall of Fame. Whereas it was great pride and deepest gratitude that all of us, everyone at Board 4, everyone in the Clinton-Chelsea community, everyone in the city, honors Martin Treat, who has distinguished himself in service to the community and is worthy of the esteem of all New Yorkers. So now, therefore, I, Gail Brewer, as your borough president, do hereby commend, I'm giving you the proclamation virtually, for your contribution to our beloved New York City, and proclaim Wednesday, April 7th, 2021, Martin Treat Appreciation Day in the borough of Manhattan. I'm just sorry I can't actually give it to you. Oh boy, congratulations, Martin.
Martin, do you want to say something?
Exactly.
Or Kathleen, do you want to say something?
We can't hear anything.
I'm going to bring Kathleen over. She's in the public section, and I'll bring her over. Kathleen, I'm going to bring you over. If you're on, Kathleen, if you're whatever device you're on, I brought you over. So if you want to use your device instead of Martin's, that'd be best.
I don't think they can hear us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your audio, your mic is live, Martin, supposedly.
And Kathleen, you're over too. So whatever device you were on before, when you were watching this separately, you could use that. Were you on a different device? There we go.
There we go.
They can't hear us.
There we go.
I could hear Martin a minute ago. Where did Catherine go?
I brought her over. I don't know.
Audio.
Kathleen.
There she is.
Yes,
All
Yes.
right.
yes.
We can hear you.
Go
I,
ahead.
I wanted Gail to remember that Martin taught high school for 21 years at West Side High.
Yes. The Ed Reynolds.
That's
School.
right. That's right, the Ed Reynolds School.
Ed Reynolds School.
This was a terrific meeting. Makes me want to join the community board. Night. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Martin.
Martin, thank you for your service to the board for many years, and we really appreciate you and your advocacy on the issues that have been important to you. And the board won't be the same without you.
We're going to miss that voice, Martin. It's unique.
Hell yes, it is. Love you, Martin.
I particularly will miss the individual I moments.
Yeah.
Thank you, Martin.
Yay, Martin.
Woo, congratulations.
There he is.
And now we will go back to the president of Manhattan.
All right, I'll give my report quickly. A couple of issues. Number one, thank you to Joe Resticci and certainly Brian Lewis from our office. I think the discussion about the issues of public safety and Hell's Kitchen Neighborhood Committee were excellent today. And without, I'm sure that you'll talk about it more. There's quite a bit of follow-up, which we look forward to making sure happens. The second issue is, I think you know, along those lines, that I organized the press conference when we didn't even know the name of Miss Vilma Carley, who was the woman beaten up really on 43rd Street. And I think for some reason that particular, there's so many anti-Asian hate attacks, but that one had a real feeling of fear that hit all of us. So I'm glad and thank the NYPD for arresting the individual who was a perpetrator, and also want to thank all the work that was been done by the owner of the building. All very complicated and unfortunate, but just so you know, I appreciate everybody's input. And right now, as we speak, we are writing a letter between the coordination between the Port Authority, security, and anything with Nakia, which is the shelter where Mr. Elliott lived. I don't think there've been a lot of problems. I helped them move in there, but one individual really did something awful. There's some good news. I don't ever have a lot of good news, but the one of them is thanks to Dick Godfrey, Liz Kruger, and the entire state delegation, we were frightened, and this isn't exactly in Board 4, but boy, would it impact Board 4, petrified, livid, that there could be a casino in the borough of Manhattan. I have to say, if that's one issue that would set me off, that would be it. I can just think of all the people with the problems that would be in my office, your offices, and taking money away from our theaters and our restaurants right to the casino. So to the credit of those I mentioned and others, the governor's idea of putting a casino was not in the budget. That was really nip and tuck. And it's on a separate track, and separate tracks are good because sometimes you can derail separate tracks. So just very good news. And the second news, which you also were involved in, was I think with the Empire Station, I walked around like a week before the vote with the ESD, and you get a sense of what the challenges are. I know you have a small portion, Board 5 has others. So it's my understanding that another piece of good news that the money that was in the budget and that is in the budget can only be used for the station MTA, not for anything else outside. That's a big win for those of you who know the nuances of government. And so now we will have something specific in terms of long-term planning. Some of you know there's an agenda item that has been worked out. So I just want to say thank you, because these two pieces, thanks to your elected officials and to you, I think we had some positive movement. The rest of the world may not know all of the little tracks, but I know you do. I also stood the other day with a 504 Democratic Club and their lawyer, Arthur Schwartz, 14th Street between 7th and 8th. We're going to get 6 new elevators. I can't tell you, I think Martin Treat can respond to this, how pleased they are that this, between funding that Senator Schumer is going to arrange, hopefully, sounds like it will, from the folks at the federal DOT, plus lawsuits, plus MTA, equals 6 new elevators. And that's a big deal for the community. So people are really, really pleased about that. I also want to say that Restaurant Row wants to be a permanent pedestrian plaza. I think that's a great idea, and I want to work on that to be supportive. You've heard a lot about helicopters. I have to say, sometimes you just do everything you can, and there's not much more I can do. So we are very excited about the federal legislation. I have met more New Jersey elected officials than I ever knew existed, and they have met with us. And then in addition, the New York officials have met, and we are all on the same page. Now, does that help get rid of the helicopters? No. This past weekend, endless. My phone was ringing, texting, people calling me. You know, I don't know what else to do. We've tried everything. So New Jersey folks are going to try even more to get the airports to not allow helicopters that are non-essential. But I really thank the congressional folks, because without them, I just don't know what else we're going to be able to do. We have also good news. I think this is, again, along Martin Treat's interest, but there's a Veterans Treatment Court that actually in Manhattan I helped to start, but now it has been sort of seconded and supported even more by the state. So that's great, because there'll be more support in terms of funding. We're all supportive of open streets if they have support from the community. We have a report on it. I spent a lot of time going to all of the different streets in the borough of Manhattan. If you don't have a nonprofit working in that open street, it's not going to work. And so I just urge every open street to have somebody who's thinking about how to program it. That's incredibly important. In terms of upcoming events, you know, we've been nonstop on vaccinations. I think everybody else has, but every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, there's 2 issues. One is just to talk endlessly about this vaccination issue, from the technology screw ups to the seniors who are homebound to NYCHA. I could go on, but the fact of the matter is that in addition to that discussion, every other Tuesday, we're doing something that I feel strongly about. There's great money that's coming to the city of New York. That's very good, but God help us if it's not spent right. And if we don't pay attention, it could be, whether it's education, housing, all the broadband issues. I could go on. So we've been meeting. You're welcome to join us 3 o'clock every Tuesday to talk about these issues so that people understand. The last discussion was about healthcare, federally qualified, of which you have some in your district. Certainly the issue of what are we doing about even transportation money. And we've had discussions about the city budget with city budget experts, what or is not going to happen with the federal money. It really needs to be paid attention to. Just so you know, Rob Snyder is the wonderful borough historian, and he's doing a lecture. Anybody's welcome to talk about pandemic, Manhattan, oral history, and many other topics, April 13th, 6 to 8 p.m. Thank you very much, Ward 4. And I always love working with you. And I have to say, we have a couple of huge positive aspects to this report. Thank you.
Gail, do you have time for a question?
Sure. And I
Hector,
got to get
go
to
ahead.
board 11.
Go ahead, Hector.
Hello, Borough President. Nice to see you again. Thank you.
Hi, Hector. Thank you.
I have a question for you. I don't know if you're probably aware of this, but they opened up the senior center over here at the Fulton houses today for vaccinations, which I'm pretty happy about. Miguel Acevedo had a big hand in that to get that going.
Yep.
Originally, the intention was to serve underserved communities like ours to make sure they were vaccinated. That was supposedly under the rationale behind opening it here. But unfortunately, that didn't seem, I was there this morning and I had several complaints from other folks stating that we had a lot of folks who don't actually live in this community getting vaccinated. Now, I'm all for people getting vaccinated, and that's great, but honestly, I was a little disappointed to see that because that seems to be a reenactment of what happened up at the Armory up in Washington Heights several months ago.
Well, this is what I know, Hector. I'm so familiar with this. So what happens is I've been to I couldn't get there today, but I've been to almost every NYCHA and other vaccination sites in the borough, Lower East Side, all the way up to Washington Heights. What happens is, it's interesting because some people say, oh, you have to tell people, you got to put the information on the city website or the city vaccination site. And then it turned out, whether it was Ryan Health Center, Harlem Hospital, or other, like you said, local entities, I hate to say all the white people showed up. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah.
And so
in this case, it was Hudson Gill.
Okay, no, but I'm saying who comes from out of the neighborhood to get a shot? And particularly when it is focused on NYCHA. I've had to actually been in a situation where people showed up from Westchester when it was at a NYCHA community center in Harlem. And I actually was the one that had the pleasure of kicking them out. So you have to actually, the way that it works best is to have the tenant leaders, the community center I'm making this up, 60 slots or 50 slots or 100 slots, and only you can schedule people. Because otherwise people come from all over the place. So I don't know how the outreach was done, but we have learned the hard way that it has to be controlled. And that's a bad situation because then people say, how come I didn't know about so-and-so? Well, the problem is when you know about so-and-so and you put it out for the world, then the local people don't get a chance to get the doses. So I don't know if that's what happened, but I've seen it and now we know what to do. So I don't know if I don't know if Hudson Gill is a one-time thing or if it's going to be ongoing, but you have to keep it local. And it's not, what happens now is you have to, if you're people like me, I gotta have like 30 different websites we check every day to help people get slots, but we don't publish them on our website because then other people are going to show up. So I am only too familiar with this problem. So I could talk to Hudson Gill and see if they can change the way they do the advertising. That's really the bottom line.
Yeah, I'd appreciate if you could look into that. A lot of people around here would. Thank you so much.
No, I know it only too well.
All right. I don't see any other hands. Thank you very much, Gail.
Thank you very much.
Being here all the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, staying with our elected officials, we have Assembly Member Linda Rosenthal with us this evening. Assembly Member Rosenthal, the floor is yours.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yep.
Okay. So I am actually still voting on the budget on my other computer because the Senate finished. I think they ended up like at 2 a.m. or something, but we adjourned last night around 11 and we've been up on it all day and we still have 2 or 3 more bills to go. So I thought I'd just take a break to pop in and get my head out of Albany land and give you a small update. On Sunday, April 11th, at 4 p.m., I'm having a virtual town hall with Senator Schumer. And I encourage everybody who's interested in hearing, what he got in the federal budget and what we got in the state budget. And then you can have an opportunity to ask questions. So maybe CB4 can send it out, or maybe you have already, but we'll send you the notice, and that would be great if you sent it out. Let's see. I know a lot of you know about Steve Croman, who's a landlord none of us like, and not just because he's bad, he's evil. He was prosecuted in 2016 by the Attorney General's office for harassment, tax fraud, mortgage fraud. He went to prison and was required to pay $8 million to tenants he harassed. through a restitution fund. So we wrote to HCR asking there to be an audit of his housing portfolio to determine if there were rent overcharges. And there were more than 20, and it's still ongoing. Recently, he submitted an affidavit to the state Supreme Court, and he said that he needed to delay the final payment of restitution to the tenants because of COVID-related financial losses. 17% of his units are vacant. However, tenants have said those units have been vacant for years. So he's not only having bad behavior in the past, he's compounding it by using it as an excuse that he doesn't have to pay tenants that he owes $8 million to. So we wrote to HCR again and to see how many units were, for them to audit how many units were vacant before the pandemic. And I call this the orphan defense. And hopefully HCR gets the goods on him. It's just continued harassment by that one particular landlord. I know a lot of you are concerned about sanitation issues, and we know how great you know, the Litter Legion is in Hell's Kitchen, and so I've been working with them, and I know as many others. I know Eric Botcher is personally a sanitation person, honorary, but actually really. And much of the program about, you know, helping clear our streets of garbage was halted during the pandemic, and the mayor reduced the Department of Sanitation budget. We worked with on the Upper West Side, One Block Upper West, and Litter Legion. We got supplies from DSNY. Neighborhood groups were cleaning. They continue to clean, and submitted testimony to the city during the budget hearings requesting that the city restore the budget for DSNY. Since then, they've announced that Sunday litter pickup has been restored. There's an increase in the litter baskets, and more than 100 DSNY trucks per week, and restoration of funding for Sunday litter basket service is forthcoming. So I think it's wonderful. It's a good example of when neighbors take the situation in their hand in times of crisis, but then we put it back on government where it belongs. It's not our job to pick up other people's filth on the street, but people did it because they care about their neighborhood. Now we go back to having sanitation with better employment for its dedicated workforce, and perhaps we don't have to do as much to keep every block clean. So in the state budget, there's plenty of good stuff, including no tuition increase for SUNY and CUNY for the first time in years. We also pay more than a third of the campaign for fiscal equity that has been owed for years and years. We have a huge increase in the foundation aid. We are closing the TAP gap, so there's a $500 bump to every student who's eligible for TAP. You know, we do a lot of good things. We have a rent relief program. So anyone who hasn't paid the rent in the past year because of COVID hardship, the tenant and the landlord will be able to apply and get an entire year of arrears. Now you have to qualify. So in the state, if you make 50% of the AMI and below, you will be eligible. The federal program calls for 80% of AMI, and we will get there if we don't exhaust the 50% of AMI eligibility. But landlords can apply, tenants can apply. There will be an easy form to fill out. So you're not going to have to find every document you ever owned attesting to your apartment and your work life, because we see that happened with the HCR distribution of up to $100 million, and very few people had their rent paid through that because of the program was bureaucratic and cumbersome. So this one will be easier. Small landlords will be prioritized, as will the lowest income people. And this way, you know, a lot of small landlords have been reaching out saying, what about us? And so we're going to put them at the beginning of the list, because the ones with 20 units and under, you know, they have obligations as well. We also have $575 million in mortgage relief. There's lots and lots of good stuff in in this budget, and we also have $2.1 billion to be distributed across the state to people who were not eligible for any funding this past year. The people who stood on the pantry lines every single day to get their food, they will get checks to make up for the lack of any help from federal or state or local government. So there's plenty more in the budget. There's money for local schools and local projects, and it's pretty good. We also raised the personal income tax on people making over $1 million by a little, but people making over $5 million by a little more. Some corporate tax hikes. We didn't get everything, but we got a lot, and we're going to work toward more next year. We have $100 million to help homeless people get housing, and that's not enough at all, but it's more than ever. NYCHA, we have $250 million, but we are expecting to get a lot more from the federal government. And that's something Chuck Schumer has said, that he's trying his best to get NYCHA money. And he'll be discussing that as well on the town hall. My last thing I'm gonna say is that the favorite holiday of anyone who I've encountered is Shred Day. And so I'm having a Shred Day. Like in the deepest of the pandemic, people were like, I need my unemployment, but I also need to know when your next Shred Day is. And so I've scheduled one with Senator Serrano for Sunday, May 23rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in front of my office. And so I look forward to seeing all of you then. We'll send you the flyer as well, so you can post it and give it out to your friends and neighbors who you know have too much paper. One last thing. At the JCC in the next few weeks, I've arranged for the Apthorpe Pharmacy to give out vaccines. So I'll put something out about that. Now that people 16 years old plus are eligible, you know, we got to get everyone who wants to and who should be vaccinated, so we can go back to normal life at some point very close. So I'm going to go back to voting on the budget. I look forward to seeing all of you in person soon. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Rosenthal.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to keep moving here. We've got 3 elected reps with us as well tonight. I'm going to start with Luke Wolf from Controller Scott Stringer's office.
Everybody, nice to see you all tonight. To start, I just dropped a bunch of information in the chat, including our spring newsletter, some NYCHA audits and information we've done, as well as one for the immigrant community. I want to also make sure I thank Martin for your years of dedicated community service to the board on behalf of the controller, who I believe appointed you to the board back in the day. So thank you for all your work, Martin. A few updates from our office. One piece of good news around the mid-year adjustment. So DOE decided that they will not be clawing back all of the money from schools, which had decreased enrollment this year. That was something the controller made a big push around. So we're really happy that many schools, including some in CB4, which have owed tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, will not have to give back that money mid-year. One other update is we conducted a workplace survey. We surveyed over 1,200 New Yorkers about their work-life balance during the pandemic. And what we found was that frontline workers, people of color, really struggle with that sort of work-life balance. And if you were a woman who had to take care of someone at home, there was a 50% chance that you had to give back paid hours of work. And that really speaks to the lack of workplace flexibility, lack of childcare options. So we have a number of recommendations to hopefully build more workplace flexibility in, especially help those frontline workers who were there for us during the pandemic. We've also been doing a lot of work around food security policy. So last month, the controller released a report with a number of recommendations to really address food insecurity in New York City, including creating a $25 million fund for those who are left out of SNAP and other food security programs, working with community-based organizations to increase enrollment in SNAP, EBT, and other programs, as well as focusing on the cultural appropriateness of food that's been distributed through the city, because we've heard a lot of issues from communities that a lot of that food isn't dietarily or religiously sensitive to their needs. So there's just a few updates from our office. There's a lot more in the chat, and happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Luke. Appreciate it. All right, I'm going to go to Matt Ty next from Dick Godfrey's office.
Hi, everyone. So you've heard a lot about the state budget so far tonight, so I'm just going to mention a few extra additional pieces of it. So the State Assembly is still voting on the final bills, hopefully finishing tonight, if not tomorrow morning. But first, as many of you know, the governor wanted $1.3 billion in the budget for his Empire Station complex. And this is the proposal that you've probably seen in the news that would have leveled much of the surrounding neighborhood around Penn Station and built 10 new buildings, most of them being large towers. This was not a plan to rebuild our transportation infrastructure. This was a real estate proposal and was unacceptable. And thanks to our joint efforts with Senators Hoylman, Jackson, and Kruger, and the negotiating that Speaker Hastie led on behalf of the Assembly, the money in the budget can now only be used for transportation improvements below grade, focusing the money on Penn Station itself. So the legislature also blocked the governor's language that would have allowed a casino in Manhattan, and also the local zoning overrides that the governor wanted, which I believe is a part of letter number 1 on your agenda later on. A couple other highlights in the budget. There's $1 billion in small business and arts relief and recovery assistance. This includes a small business recovery grant program, a restaurant resiliency grant program, another program focused just on arts and cultural organizations, as well as a $100 million tax credit to New York City musical and theatrical production. And this will really go a long way to help jumpstart the industry that's really suffered so much over the past year. On education funding, PI had some of the biggest gains in a very long time. Local school districts are going to see a $3 billion increase from last fiscal year. This has been something that has been a long fight to get this extra foundation aid in, and it's something that I know Senator Jackson has been a tremendous leader on and fighting for, and a lot of this is due to his long advocacy. There's also a 3-year tuition freeze for all SUNY and CUNY schools. And in the healthcare portion of the budget, this is the first budget since Assemblymember Gottfried has become chair of the committee that we have fought back every single cut that a governor has proposed. Whether it's Governor Cuomo or any other governor, they always try and chip into Medicaid. The governor tried to cut Medicaid by $415 million. We fought that back completely. The governor wanted to cut $600 million in hospital funding. We fought that back completely. There's also, we delayed the carve out for the Medicaid prescription drug benefit for an additional 2 years, expanded postpartum coverage for women on Medicaid from 60 days to 1 year, and now nursing homes will now be required to spend 70% of their revenue on direct patient care. And the last thing I just want to mention is that last week, New York State has legalized marijuana. So the Marijuana Regulation Taxation Act is going to create new economic opportunities and really focuses a lot of the new revenue on community reinvestment in neighborhoods that have been hardest hit by the war on drugs. New York is projected to collect new revenue of about $350 million a year, and this is expected to generate between 30,000 and 60,000 jobs. So what you need to know right now, it's now legal to have up to 3 ounces on your person. Smoking marijuana, though, is illegal in all areas where it's illegal to smoke cigarettes, and that does include public parks. Retail sales will begin, I believe, in April 22, so about a year from now. And I know you have a pretty long agenda, so I'm going to leave it there. I just want to say on behalf of Assemblymember Gottfried, thank you, Martin, for all of your years of service, and you're certainly going to be missed on this board.
Thank you, Matt, for your update. I was going to go to Carl Wilson next, but we were going to make Carl wait yet again because we've been joined by State Senator Robert Jackson. And so I'm going to go to Senator Jackson, who is probably also sleep deprived. Go ahead, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, we got finished about 3:37 in the morning, and there was a press conference of IONI. IONI is Invest in Our New York Coalition at 10 a.m. In front of basically the Capitol, basically communicating what we achieved overall. And I say to you that listening to everything what people are saying, or people are very pleased with the budget considering who we were dealing with last year and the year before. And one prime example of that is the foundation aid formula. He has agreed, along with the two leaders, of 1.4 billion phased in over 3 years, and then continuation of the monies that our children are entitled to. And that 1.4 billion is statewide, with the minimum school district at 60% of the foundation aid formula, and every district will receive at least a 2% increase in foundation aid. So obviously, if you may be aware that Michael Rebell, the attorney who lives on Upper West Side, who handled this case from day one back in 1993, there's a lawsuit that was filed 5 years ago to go after the $4 billion that the state owes the children of New York State. And that lawsuit is pending, and he's not going to withdraw the lawsuit. And he's going to try to make sure that we tie the hands of the state of New York so that they don't renege on the phase-in of 3 years and continuation of funding. I did hear Linda and others talk about, obviously, the Penn Station situation, and you've heard it twice already. And Dick Gottfried and all of us from Manhattan were involved in communicating that to our leaders, both Andrew Stewart Cousins and Carl Heastie. So that's a good thing. And some people say, why do you think the governor has negotiated with us? Well, he's up against the ropes on so many other things that he didn't want to have basically a battle with us, knowing that he's battling on all fronts. So we hope that what happens is that we come together in unity in order to deal with all issues, because there's some people, for example, the Excluded Workers Fund is $2.1 billion, and there were quite a number of Democrats were opposed to looking after the most neediest members of the state's family, and that is the essential undocumented excluded workers. So there's a lot in the budget. I have a summary of some fine points, which is 39 pages, and I'd like to send it to CB4 so you can see some of the questions and some of the answers, so that you can understand everything that is and may be a controversy, such as casinos, horse betting, excluded workers, circuit breakers, small business, whole chapter amendments, and all of the things that we got in the budget this time. So overall, I think we did well. Obviously, the most important thing is, as I've said to people, and I'm going to close, you may think because of my involvement in education, the most important thing was education. I said, no. The most important thing for me as a legislator was making sure people were not evicted, their whole infrastructure. And then food insecurity statewide is a huge issue. And other parts of my district, whether it's in the southern part of my district, which is 26th Street and 9th Avenue, or the highest part, which is in Marble Hill at 230th Street, food insecurity is still a major issue. And then number three, obviously I wish we had universal health coverage, but healthcare is so important, especially the mental health situation that we all see, that people are just going off and doing all kind of crazy stuff. But there are mental health issues that we need to deal with. And many people have asked me about that, even with our children in school. So that's a major, major issue. Then obviously the fourth issue for me is education. So it's about protecting the entire family through this pandemic so we can survive. And I will be up in Albany. We go back on the 19th of April. Basically, we're basically taking a break for a week in order to get back and then finish up everything we have to by June. Hopefully that's what it looks like. I'll be glad to answer any questions. I will email this to the Community Board 4, along with, if you haven't received my my biweekly email update. I'll send that to you also, so you can put it in the Dropbox. Thank
Senator
you.
Jackson, we're 2 hours into our meeting and we're not even to the business session yet. With all due respect, is it okay if we don't take questions tonight?
I'd be glad to. I'm going to go get something to eat. Thank you, everyone. See you
Thank you
soon.
very much, sir.
You're welcome.
All right. I think I've got one more elected rep left. Carl, you have 30 seconds. Go.
Excellent. Good evening, CB4. Just a couple of quick things from us. So we are working with the Anti-Violence Project to put together a bystander training. Heard there was some interest in that this evening. We are looking at the date right now. It's not locked in yet. It's looking like May 19th, but we'll come back to the board when that is finalized. But I hope you all can join us for that. On the 18th of this month from 12 to 2, we will be doing a spring cleanup day that is based out of the parks in our district. In the CB4 area, we will be at the Hell's Kitchen Park, Matthews Palmer Playground, Penn South Playground, and Chelsea Park, working with the local residents and block associations to help spruce up those areas in partnership with Parks and Sanitation. And speaking of sanitation, as Assemblymember Rosenthal mentioned, about a week and a half ago, the mayor announced some restorations to the sanitation budget, which includes more litter basket services, as well as more trucks in Community Board 4. We will be going from, we will be getting 6 additional vehicles, 12 to 18, to help with litter basket services, as well as 2 trucks dedicated to Sunday basket pickup services. So I think this is going to make a huge difference in the litter and sanitation problems that we've seen in the pandemic world. We're also going to be getting some borough-based strike teams, is what they're calling them, which are a mobile unit that is meant to deal with hotspots, sanitation hotspots. So still working out exactly how that will work, but I think we're eager to utilize them in CB4. And then just one little piece of fun local news. In the Matthews Palmer Playground, many of you might know that there has been a scaffold up in that beautiful new playground for the past 2.5 years, well, almost 3 at this point. We did receive word from the Parks Department that they had issued permits to the co-op to begin that wall repair. We had been negotiating between the co-op and the city for as long as I've been working here. We were at a standstill, but the co-op has accepted responsibility and is taking steps to repair that wall. So we'll have that scaffolding removed, and finally the full park will be utilized ever since it's been renovated. So I know it's been a long time, so I'm going to stop there. And if there's any questions or anything, but happy to.
The restoration of the mural?
So no, that does not include the restoration of the mural. There is a mural committee that I'm sure Kathleen and Martin can tell you a lot about. But in order for the mural to be restored, the wall has to be repaired first.
Right.
So
no, I understand. You said we're going to get the wall fixed. I didn't know if that included, getting the mural, updated.
No, the co-op that's not part of their scope. The co-op is not going to repair the mural, but the mural committee is ready to go once that is done.
They've been ready to go for a while. All right.
Yeah, that'll just go through July, and we're not anticipating the park be closed for that. They should be able, the way the permits work, the park should remain open while that work takes place. That's all.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate it. Okay. I think that covers the electeds. So now we're going to go to someone who wasn't elected, but is the most important person on this call, our district manager, Jesse Bodine.
Evening, everybody. Yes, I'm Jesse Bodine, the district manager, Community Board 4. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I just want to raise some highlights of events that the district manager staff attended on behalf of the board and some upcoming events. I think, as most of members know, I and a number of board members participated in a day of visibility to stand against anti-Asian bias in Hell's Kitchen last Friday. I got some very positive press, and we will be expanding our online resources regarding witnessing and or experience in hate crime or discrimination. We had existing material there, but we're going to update it and make it more relevant and also more prominent. The board was also able to connect Ryan Health Center with Project Find to hold a vaccination day at Harborview Terrace today. That was in the works for quite a while. Maria Ortiz was an integral part of that happening. And a number of other folks and other elected offices, but that was something that we had been advocating for and I'd been advocating for. So Project Find was able to confirm the vaccination slots were dedicated to Harborview and Amsterdam Houses tenants, which is another NYCHA development. It's a sister development to Harborview, but is just outside of our district to the north. In addition, through the district office, we were also able to connect the PTA of PS 111 with Brookfield, and who were able to help them with resources to fund outdoor learning. Again, I'm going to sing Maria Ortiz's praises. The result of our clothing drive that we held, our most recent clothing drive that we held, delivered over 900 pairs of socks and nearly 2,000 pairs of underwear to families, single adults, children, and single moms living in local shelters.
Thanks for the donations.
Yep. Ryan Health Center is looking for volunteers to help administer COVID vaccinations. That we sent out material on this last week. We'll continue to send it out. They're looking for anybody, registered nurses, licensed practitioner nurses, physicians, dentists, other licensed healthcare providers. People should contact volunteer@ryancenter.org. It will be on our website. It has gone out through our newsletter. It will continue to go out through our newsletter. It is imperative that Ryan Health Center gets volunteers. They're doing great work in our district with Hartley House, with NYCHA developments, with pop-up sites all over, but they are only one organization. As mentioned previously, I just want to highlight again, we have enhanced the number of ways the public can sign up for our public session during full board. It is on our homepage, it is on our calendar page, it is on the Zoom registration page, it is on the Zoom registration confirmation email you've gotten. So I think, and it is also now on our full board agenda PDF. So I think that should cover most of it. Finally, just as a note, Manhattan Community Board 4 staff will begin to return to our working on site starting May 3rd, as that is the declaration from the City Hall. So over the month of April, we will be drafting a reopening plan, and I will let all of you know how that is going to roll out. April committees updates very quickly. So really it's not necessarily a different date, but it just is it's a little bit of a reconfiguration just because the way the month falls. But WP will be meeting tomorrow, right after the day after full board. All other committees are meeting on their regular time and regular. And of course, the Social and Racial Justice Task Force meets on the third Tuesday of the month. And that is my report.
You've got questions, Jesse. Start with Brad.
Jesse, I was just wondering when you had time to film the iPhone video of you cooking in the kitchen. You're fantastic in it.
The iPhone video of me cooking in the kitchen?
Oh, he looks just like you. Identical.
Oh.
Identical. Every time I watch it, I think of you.
I'm not sure what it's referencing, but it sounds like I need to get my attorney on this, and I deserve some residuals. What's my back deal?
You were great in it.
Oh, okay. Well, Brad, please send it to me. So I'll.
I will. Okay.
It might be me, by the way. I really don't know.
Sabrina, go ahead.
Sure. So you're saying that you guys are going back to the office on May 3rd. How about us? When are we meeting in person? Do we have a
So that's a great question, Sabrina. So just to clarity, I know this when you say going back to the office on May 3rd, that just to be clear, we are starting the
hybrid version of it.
We're starting the process of returning to the office. I don't want to get people to think that May 3rd, the lights are on and the doors are open and everybody's walking through and we're as if nothing has changed. We are having to construct all. The way it works is the community board is considered an agency. So all agencies have to create a return to work plan by May 3rd. So Even though we are a small agency, it does require us to follow all of the regular, protocols and regulations, which is not easy for us to do. So what that will look like starting May 3rd for us, I'm not sure yet. We might not have, Monday through Friday open door hours. My staff will have a hybrid version of, people in the office, that kind of stuff. But for board members, and I understand that, until, I'll be honest with you, the governor continues to extend the executive order to allow, not in person, public meetings to occur. I know this is something Gail Brewer's office is, thinking about. Obviously, every district, every community board is going to have a different way of doing it. We should discuss that, I think, as an executive committee. To begin with, that conversation should start at exec. I will very briefly just tell you, I have a lot of questions and concerns, about doing a hybrid model, and making sure we are still being able to be as transparent and available as possible. But there's no set date for that yet, Sabrina.
All right, Martin has his hand up as well.
I think Martin's had his hand up for the whole time, so I'm not sure. It might be.
Actually, it's Rob. It's not Martin. I don't know why I'm labeled as such. Anyway, real quick. On 42nd Street, we moved out and it coincided with the pandemic. Did we actually officially move in to the lofts over at 33rd Street?
Yes, we have officially moved into the loft building on 33rd Street, 424 West 33rd Street, Suite 580. We made that announcement some time ago, and our mailing, just to be clear though, for the public, our mailing address is still the PO box number listed on our website. But yes, we are in that space. We have a what is called a licensing agreement for that space for the next few years. But we will need to be finding a permanent location, hopefully in that same building. That is my goal.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Joe, were you raising your hand or were you just waving at us?
No, I just wanted to clarify Jesse's issue about the Ryan Center and the vaccinators. That in the last 2 weeks, the big change has happened, that now there's a good vaccine supply for the first time. And last Friday, Clinton Housing, Ryan, Hudson Guild, and Hartley got together and did 300 neighborhood residents at Hartley House. And what we learned is that's because we had volunteers on a Good Friday, doctors and people who were not working. Ryan doesn't have enough line staff to set up vaccination during the day, during the week. So that's why they have this call for nurses, practitioners, anyone who come a volunteer will be able to set up more community-based sessions for vaccination if they can find them. I asked Jesse to make sure he announced that today. It's literally the vaccine supply is now there. There's not enough vaccinators to deliver it.
That's what he said. Okay.
Christine, did you?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. I want to clarify something that Jesse clarified. The public session is the primary, if not the only time that members of the public get to actually speak at board meetings. So if for the members of the public, if you want to speak, that's your chance. If the elected officials are taking questions, the priority goes to the board members. And given the time constraints we're under, we don't usually have time to take questions from the public or the elected officials. So that is the opportunity for the public members of the public to speak during a full board meeting. Obviously, it's a little bit easier at the committee meetings, but I just wanted to clarify that as well, why we don't go back to, I cut off the board members with questions, so I'm certainly not going back out to the public or we'd be here all night. Speaking of which, the chair report is the next item on the agenda. Small meetings in March included transportation meeting with Target and sending an administrative letter regarding delivery operations at 44th and 10th. Because they're parking their trucks everywhere and they're not supposed to be. Jesse mentioned the Harborview Terrace Vaccination Day. An exec and Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use had an initial briefing from the Highline folks, from Friends of the Highline, and ESD about the Highline East project. And the Empire Station Complex Working Group continues to work. And that was reformulated as of earlier today. We're getting more representation. In addition to the budget money being restricted, we are getting more of a say in that plan. So we're moving forward on that, and that's going to be the next big group project that we're working on. And that is it for my report. We are going to move to the business session.
Lowell, can I just jump in one quick second?
Sure, Jesse.
I appreciate your patience with me. Just for clarification on regarding the work that Christine and Dale are doing with Target, we did hold a follow-up meeting with them today. It was very productive. It's the beginning of a conversation. They have been responsive. They understand the idea, the concerns we have with the school being there, and they are going to respond. So I just want to make sure the public understands that there is progress on that.
All right, great. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to go to the Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee, which is Jean-Daniel Nolan. JD, are you here? Yes, you are. There you are.
I am here.
You have
Can
one
you hear
item.
me? Well,
Yes, you have one item. Please present.
I will briefly. This is a continuing item. You'll probably get another letter about this next month. It's about the proposals from the Senate, from the governor, from various people about repurposing hotels or commercial spaces in Midtown for affordable housing or social service facilities such as homeless shelters. All we're saying, and we're saying it again and again, please electeds, include us in the discussion. Could be some positive things, but as we have seen, could be some negative things if you don't talk to the community. That's basically what this is about. I think, I know Joe is interested in this for the affordable housing component. Betty and Paul are also concerned about it in Chelsea. So we're all just saying, talk to us.
And Christine has a question and Paul has a question.
Yes, the line 31 say the current governor proposal should not be part of the New York State. Do we know whether it was part or not?
I think it has been removed.
Okay.
It was removed. So
we should probably.
That's why my hand is up.
Right. We should remove that line. Okay.
We will tell the typesetting department to remove that.
Yes.
Thank you, Christine.
Paul, that covered your question?
No, I was going to make a statement that I heard that was out of the budget and we needed to remove that from the letter. Thank you.
So Betty, you have your hand up now. You've got other changes?
Now, just related to this topic, that Hell's Kitchen was ahead of us, but we've organized a group of volunteers to do field work in Chelsea. We've got the whole area of Chelsea covered, thanks to Pam and others, and we will develop an accurate database on hotels and office buildings.
Thank you, Betty. We've organized an even bigger contingent of volunteers, so we will once again be ahead of you.
It is not a competition, folks. All right, but since we just did Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use, in an equal time, we'll go to the Chelsea Land Use Committee. Betty and Paul.
Yeah, before we go to the item 2 that's been tabled, I just wanted to spend a quick second on why it was tabled. Is because not only did we defer the $1.3 billion to avoid above ground development and push it into transportation below ground, we also, because of the efforts of the elected officials and this working group, the public comment period has been now extended with no definitive date as to when that public hearing will be. So that's another really great accomplishment, that we successfully put this project, sort of put the brakes on this project. So the reason the board is not presenting a letter is because we are going to wait until we have a better understanding of where ESD stands and what other undue influence we'll need to apply. So that's why that's on hold and tabled. So it's a congratulations to everybody's hard work that we are able to do that. Thank you.
All right, now number 3.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about this. This is a application to the Landmarks Preservation Commission by Sarah Lehigh Building at 601 West 26th Street to install mechanical equipment, including a generator, on the 18th floor of the roof. And we're recommending denial of the application because this location is not consistent with the historical design of the building or the master plan for the building, and it is clearly visible from the nearby neighborhood. David and Pam and I walked around the whole area and looked at the mock-up, you know, with the orange net that you have on the top of a building when there's a mock-up, and found it was definitely visible from 11th Avenue, 28th Street, 29th Street, 24th Street, and from the Hudson River Walkway. And the proposal deviates from the 2000 master plan. And there was supposed to be a different location that would be shielded from view on a different part of the roof for this kind of equipment. So we recommend denial of this application and have suggested that the applicant perhaps put the equipment off the roof or in just off the roof. So that's it.
Any questions? All right, thank you, Betty. BLP, Burton Frank.
Hi, these three items were relatively uncontroversial, and in fact, we had our shortest meeting ever of the BLP committee since I've been involved. So I suggest we just bundle them together when we vote, unless anyone has questions.
Questions on items 4, 5, or 6?
I'll be P&E on number 6.
Okay. Jeffrey, since you wanted to speak, we're up to you.
Look at that.
Environment.
What timing for WPE? The letter is very straightforward. We received a friendly amendment to strengthen the language around requesting that the green infrastructure be essential as a means to powering any thing that needs power as it relates to the High Line and improvements. So fairly straightforward here on this. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Any questions on item number 7? Items number 8 and 9, transportation planning, Christine and Dale.
Yes. Oh, you are doing it? Go ahead.
Yeah. 2 letters to the Port Authority, one on the location of toll collection gantries, and one on work that's being undertaken on the 9th Avenue side of the Port Authority building to repair the truss. We demanded a cut of the toll collections for CB4 to be delivered to the office on a monthly basis. No, we didn't do that. We just requested trees to obscure the gantries from the neighbors, and we requested that the Port Authority take all measures to keep the sidewalks and areas around the work unobstructed during the construction. So we can bundle them.
Any questions? Jesse?
Just to add on to that, we will be releasing, we've also asked them to do a construction update. So they'll be sending that out. We'll be going out tomorrow. Because of where it is and the dealing with traffic, a lot of it will be late hours, but it hopefully will not be impacting any major noise issues. So.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That is part of our ask that they have regular notifications of overnight work.
The first one will be going out tomorrow, just so we're aware.
Right. Any other questions or comments on 8 and 9? Items 10 and 11, Housing, Health, and Human Services. Maria, Joe. You're on mute, Joe.
Sorry. First item number 10 is about this pro-senior housing project under the FASH program, or the AIRS program. The letter is pretty clear, and the only item that remains open is a request by the committee that the developer commit to redistribute some of the units, not just facing the courtyard. Those discussions are ongoing. We've told the developer we're going to hold this letter until we get a response. And they have already agreed that they will make a commitment. All the amenities will be the same. And for any residential amenity like a gym, there'll be a 50% reduction for the affordable housing tenants. And the only open item is now how much they will redistribute the units throughout the project. Problem we have is that there are no HPD regulations for this program governing distribution. So that puts us at a very bad disadvantage to the normal process where it's 65% of the floors and we negotiate it up to 80. So any questions on this particular item?
Chris and Twee both have their hands up. Are your questions about this item or about the night shift group? Chris took his hand down. Twee, is your question about 278 8th Avenue?
Yes, you said in the chat.
Yes, the letter is.
No, it's not tabled. It's normal when we're waiting on a commitment letter. We would approve the letter pending what the commitment is. We will keep, the language will either be, we disagree strongly because you haven't changed it, or thank you for making a change as per the commitment.
Okay. Chris, was your question about this or about NYCHA? Chris?
Question was related to 11. Thank you. Sorry, I double mute myself just for you. No, it's about 11.
Okay, so Joe, do you want to present on 11?
Sure. So,
that was Twee's question in the chat, I think.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah, it was in the chat. I was reading it so I can keep up with her. She's having tech problems. So 11, first of all, I want to thank all the board members. This went out very late last night. This was our special meeting on NYCHA happened on March 29th. Did not give a lot of time to put this complicated letter together. Thank you for forbearance and taking it and reading it the best you can. Understand this is a culmination of work the board has been doing via the Chelsea NYCHA working group. It is not the first time we're hearing about this. It now brings this portion of it, this part of it to a conclusion and a new part starting. We had a public meeting to roll out, to have the plan and comments on it. Jesse sent out the link of the working group report to all of the members of the board. We discussed it at length in the housing committee meeting. The response was overwhelmingly positive and very specific questions brought to us. This letter does a couple of things. One is it puts out the community board support for the plan. It creates an executive summary of the report because many people are not able to read the report in total. And then it gives a record of the items that happened and questions at that meeting, and then gives our support, but includes certain provisions for that support. I just want to make one note before we start the discussion. Had some comments from Mike Noble, and specifically in the letter on line 443, the section about Board of Management. He recommends we change it from recommends the creation to suggest the creation. And the other item is we just noted in the section about upcoming engagement. In April, the dates are April 13th and 14th. We'll include those in the letter. Otherwise, take it from there. Questions?
Mr. LeBron.
Thank you so much, Chair. And I want to thank Joe and all the members of this. So Mike had brought up an incredibly important point, and it's 3 questions, and I'll be brief. First, if we can change it to a much stronger language outside of suggest, and the logic being, if you'd consider, is that there have been many models in the past within the United States, specifically the St. Louis model of an exchange from Section 9 to Section 8 housing that the federal government had allowed for an actual management model of and by the tenants that worked for a very long time up until St. Louis's collapse. I lived in St. Louis for 5 years, and I actually lived in a dormitory not that far away from where that project existed. If you would be willing to consider strong language that would create legislation to codify that management board, I would really, really appreciate it, just as somebody who's studied this over and over again. Second is there any state in the transfer, and I'll leave this to Joe, in the transfer of Section 9 to Section 8 housing, do we have any state laws currently, New York state laws, that protect the current tenants similarly to their Section 9 protection? Then, lastly but not leastly, if we vote on this and the Puerto Rican and Black Caucus of congressional members of New York are able to find Section 9 budgetary funding, do we then still like, do we fall back and say we no longer back this letter? Ultimately, because NYCHA was built and is predicated on Section 9 federal funding, not state and city funding. And contextually speaking, Reaganomics has forced us into this situation of a Rad Pack adoption. I'm concerned that if there is federal funding found available and we write this letter, that we would find ourselves, I guess, working against the minority leadership who represents the bulk of residents in NYCHA, New York City. Thank you.
So let me take those one at a time. The first one is scale. I dropped in the chat earlier that the nationwide capital need for public housing is $70 billion, of which
Correct.
40
and Richie Torres has requested a full funding of that.
Got it. Of which 40 billion is NYCHA. The current funds in the American Rescue Act are 40 billion nationwide. So the problem we're going to have here is, as we've gone through in the whole working group pretty much for over a year, is that there is not a huge constituency for Section 9. There is a large constituency for Section 8. Even if we got the if the $40 billion is here today, it does not mean that $40 billion comes to New York. $40 billion is nationwide. The tenants.
Correct, but the expansion to 70 billion, Joe, would capture the 30 plus billion nationwide plus the 40 billion for NYCHA. So the question stands: if we vote yes on this letter, and you understand that my family comes from these
I got to keep
developments,
looking for a
so
moment,
if we
Chris.
vote yes on this letter,
Chris, I got to give you the picture for there's a broader context, and it's not one slice.
no, I've sat down. I know it's not one slice, Joe. I've sat down on a lot of these meetings, both as a private citizen, as a government worker. I'm asking for this board, if the federal government in its budget finds the money in totality.
I got to respond again.
Thank you.
First and foremost, in the plan, it actually states that the working group prefers public funding over anything else. And we not even struggled, we fought to include language that said it means that it does not preclude public funding if public funding shows up to be a component of the plan. One of the things I want to note, we're not going to get everything at once, period, in this city. However, if certain elements of this plan could be substituted, if public funding could substitute for certain elements in this plan, that would be a preferable outcome. Everyone is on the same page with that. That's why we fought to have that one piece of language in there. Number one.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Right. Number two, state laws. Really, NYCHA is governed not by state laws, but by the agreements with HUD. And the key issues we have here to protect tenants are having the rights and protections that the tenants, resident associations requested, get embodied in all of the leases and documents, both the regulatory agreements and the ground lease between a private sector developer and NYCHA. So that travels through. In fact, what I was very happy with so far, we've been able to increase protections that currently exist in Section 9, because in certain areas, Section 8 gives you more protection. So this is a very
How does that get codified in state law?
It doesn't need to be codified in state law because it's governed by federal law. That's where it lives.
So the pardon me, real quick. It's such a nitty gritty thing.
I know.
Okay, and so in this agreement and improving protections within Section 9, because you understand, just north of us is a very, very large public housing development in Amsterdam houses, right? So like what happens in our CB will be, potentially mirrored somewhere down the road. And I'm kind of scared for that because it's in a incredible area right behind Lincoln Center. So in this transition from Section 9 to Section 8, what elements legally can our state representatives codify to ensure that if CB5 or CB7 or CB10 replicates this as we wait for federal funds, can be mirrored in those agreements and so strongly urged and fought for on behalf of those advocates?
So the state laws simply don't apply. The federal regulations do. And the good part here is, so far, some of the changes that the Chelsea NYCHA group has got us negotiated have made their way into the new RAD packed lease citywide already. We did not specifically ever say in this process we want it to be a citywide model. Parts of it are turning out to be a citywide model. So as these specific protections get codified and get put into this RFP, they will exceed some of the current protections. For example, today, if you're in Section 9 housing and you have an undocumented individual in your household, you can't get them on the lease. You will be able to get them on a lease going forward. So there's a number of, and by the way, Chris,
May I ask another question?
Yeah, but they're very nitty gritty, these
Just
things.
on top of that, yeah. So okay, and undocumented. So I'm gonna go in totality, right? Because in the letter it said 400,000 New Yorkers live there. It's estimated, and this is not like through census. Correct. It's estimated that there's actually about 1.2 million New Yorkers living in public housing. The census is just not an accurate count, and so that 400,000 is just what we were able to get from the last 2010 count. Most families live 2 to 3 times on top of each other. So like, I know when we say that like NYCHA doesn't fully represent the totality of New York City, when you ask public housing advocates or affordable housing advocates or immigrant advocates or BIPOC advocates, they would say quite the contrary. NYCHA represents at least 1/10 of the population of New Yorkers. So like, I want to make sure on that back end, let's just tie it back in. It's a very diverse group of people. If someone is housing someone who is a former resident of a state corrections facility and released, that if they're staying with their family and it's found in that transition from Section 9 to Section 8, that their family isn't removed from housing because they were looking to home and house someone that in a place that it was once illegal to live in. You know what I mean? If you are a convicted, if you're convicted.
Guys, I'm going to jump in here for a second because there's a legal issue here that I may be able to put a pin in for you, Chris.
I'd appreciate that, please.
Because this is federal law, it doesn't, first of all, to go back to your first part, it doesn't matter what the state electeds do because it's preempted by federal law. So if it ever got disputed, the federal law takes precedence over anything the state officials would do. Now,
absolutely,
what the federal law does is it sets the baseline. What the parties here are basically doing is agreeing to go past whatever the minimum is that the law requires. So whatever the contractual agreement, because that's basically what this is, it's a contractual agreement that says, okay, it doesn't matter what the law says, we are going to exceed what the law requires, that covers it. So the agreement would take precedence over any state law that was passed because the state law will be preempted. And because the federal law only sets a floor, we can exceed the protections that floor provides. And as long as the city and the resident and the developer all agree to it, that becomes binding regardless of what the law says, as long as it meets the requirements of the law.
So Lowell, question there, and then I'll yield. So you understand that I'm concerned that individuals beyond the Biden administration, regional secretaries of HUD would look at this agreement and say, no, I no longer agree with this. I'm going to go in and write something differently, or I'm going to interpret this or have my lawyers interpret these agreements differently. The reason why I'm asking, I know that the federal law is the floor. The reason why I'm asking if there's any effort or if there's any understanding currently for the state, okay, to create a new group. In Section 8, they do.
Joe, let him finish the question.
In Section 8 housing, the state does have jurisdiction. In Section 9, the federal government does. So I'm asking, is this Section 8 or is this Section 9? Because then we start falling into New York housing law. And I want to make sure that these families, and I'm not voting yes, no, or abstaining at this point, these answers, these questions exist to get that vote. I'm asking, like, how much of these extended protections do we expect the state government to do?
So
in order to
here-
make sure that now that we're getting cookie
All right,
cutter,
Chris.
and now that
Chris, I
CB4
gotta
is
answer
going to
you.
be the
All right,
model,
Chris,
get
you asked
there.
the question. Let Joe answer you now.
Yeah, the
Thank
state
you.
does not have jurisdiction because the NYCHA retains ownership and leases a ground lease to a developer. That means it's still controlled by the federal requirements of the ownership. And that is a huge, huge issue. Everything flows from that. If it was being sold or transferred, you would be correct. In this case, the feds retain jurisdiction because of the land ownership. That's the big key to this, giving the HUD the right. And by the way, once HUD agrees to the provisions and they become part of regulatory documents, they're recorded against the property, and the next HUD secretary can't just wipe them away because it's actually recorded against the deed. That's the ultimate protection we have here.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you for entertaining all these questions. And the final point of that was, this is leased land. This land still belongs to the federal government. So federal oversight still exists, right?
It belongs to NYCHA, which has federal oversight.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much, Lowell, Joe. Thank you.
I got one last thing, and that's the Board of Managers issue. So this was discussed in detail at the Chelsea NYCHA Working Group, and really there was not a great deal of support to do tenant ownership at this point in time. The tenants overwhelmingly did not say, yes, we want to go this way. A minority did. The majority did not. So that's why it is issued as a Board of Managers, just as something, how can we get a group that helps manage going forward and gets resident input into it? Okay.
All right. Mike Noble, go ahead.
Yeah, Joe, I just wanted to point out, to reflect the earlier conversation, nowhere in this letter is the word privatization ever mentioned, okay? It does not exist, doesn't apply. And also, we had an earlier conversation today. Did you want to amend the letter in any way?
Yes, I noted those items, the thing about suggests in the April 13th and 14th. Are there more, Mike, that I missed?
How about paragraph 2?
Hold on, Mike. I was going on my highlights. I may have missed something, okay?
Me, Joe. Put me on the list.
You are, Mike, you are in the new version of the letter. This is the old one that was, again, put on the board's website. It is changed today. You're on the list.
Okay, because I'm proud of being part of this thing, and I want to be remembered as being part of it. Not
Jesse
being
will
selfish.
say right now, you're on the new one. Ready?
Okay. All right.
All right.
Would it be possible on the letter, gentlemen, that we reflect the 400,000 number as something in the 2010 census and not a true accurate count of residents living in NYCHA? I'd greatly appreciate that.
I think one of the things we may have said wrong here is like it's households. I think we should fix that number. Yes, Chris. I'll look into it and figure out how to do it.
Okay, Christine.
Yes, this is a giant letter. So the conclusion is on 518, and I think it may be valuable to move that up. So that's one recommendation. The second one is the discussion you just had, and which was raised by some of the people in the public, which is like, if we get the money, if there is money in coming from the Fed, are we not going to get that money? And the thing I'm concerned about is that if this plan is in place, the city may say, okay, this one is taken care of. Let me go and spend the Fed money in another one. And so is it valuable or possible that we have a bullet there which says, obviously, with the new concept of getting, if there is federal money available, it would preempt this plan to the extent that the money is available.
I think we should include that it is not precluded from becoming an element of this plan. That's the most important part.
But aren't you concerned that, like, DeBlasio or somebody else in the future is going to say, well, this one has its funding, let me go spend all the money on the other ones?
So there's one more piece that ties into Chris's question, and that is, we've talked about capital always, right? But there's also ongoing subsidy. And one of the distinct differences between Section 9 and Section 8 is the per apartment rents that can be paid as federal subsidy are much higher, which means Section 8 subsidies will bring more operating money to the building and therefore better maintenance. So that's an element that we don't want to forget or walk away from. If Section 9 pays $900 for a 1-bedroom and Section 8 pays $1,400 for 1-bedroom, that means we're going to see better maintained projects after the capital need.
Right.
renovation.
But I'm talking about the capital, the initial capital. So people were saying, hey, we are going to have federal dollars. Why do we need to do that, right? So I'm trying to respond to that in a way and prevent possible, deviation of capital, which would go to other projects instead of this one. So, that's.
I think we should note it that there's a clear preference for public subsidy here, and that it doesn't, and we didn't highlight it, that it does not preclude making it part of the mix. That's an important thing.
Yes, and I would move that and put that in the front, so people who have that question get it right there.
I think it belongs in the body because it was there, and when I did the executive summary, it didn't note it so clearly. I want to highlight it there.
Right, okay.
Hector.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. A lot of good points have been brought up on the course of the evening. There's a lot of misinformation that have been put out there. I basically try to work on the facts that have been presented to me in front of me. And Joe and a lot of the other folks who worked in the working group presented a lot of solid information. And as far as this letter goes, I mean, I get it. Everybody's excited about the funding that may be available to us, possibly in the near future, but it's a big if. And honestly, we've been working under the assumption all these years that there would be some sort of rescue plan along the way, all these years, living in housing. And I myself and my family, among many others, feel that, hey, enough's enough. We need to move forward. And this is a solid plan with a lot of protections already in place. This is not something that came up that was brought up overnight. This was over the course of almost 2 years. With a lot of public support and CB4, elected officials, residents, community leaders. So this was not something that was just thrown out there. And there was a lot of resident involvement here. And honestly, it really is insulting when I hear a lot of the misinformation that's put out there. And, and I don't take it personal. I get it. You hear one side of the story without actually realizing what it all adds up to. So I appreciate all the time that everybody's put into this. I don't want to take up any more of anybody's time. There's a lot of valid questions that have been brought up, like Chris LeBron and everybody else, and I respect that. But honestly, moving forward, I believe this is the best course of action rather than waiting and hoping that something's going to happen. This is an actual plan that can be put in place and working in the next several, 2 years, we can have this place up and running and renovated and livable and enjoyable for all our families. Okay.
And I just want to know for the record, what may happen here is federal money may become available, and that could be used to help not make the plan so dense or create more affordable units and less market rate. Like components of it could be easier. You know what I mean? That's the thing, because it really is making it work tight right now. That would.
And the assumption is, as it's been brought up here, is that this money, we're going to get all this money to Elliott Chelsea. That's not the case. It's got to be spread out to a lot of the low. We may get a small piece of that pie, and it may not be enough for what we need. And we'll be back to square one in a year or so. Okay? So thank you.
Betty?
Yes, two things. I just wanted to emphasize that I agree with Christine that line 518, which is with the conclusion that we support the report with certain provisions, should go right up front, because the people who read this are not going to read all this whole letter. And the other one, which is, you were just saying, Joe, is, and I've thought about it too, that if we get a chunk of money for this project, for these developments, that we could modify the plan in very, more affordable housing. Maybe we don't do part of part of the physical changes. So, you know, I hope that gets in there, because it's not that we're gonna throw away the whole plan, you know, and the Section 9 and all that, where we could just, you know, do the heating system sooner or something, you know, there's so
We could
many,
just make it better and easier and not make it so hard.
yeah, there's so many things we could do. That's exciting. Anyway, that's it.
Elzora.
Hi, everyone. You know, thank you, Chris, for bringing up all of that information. That was very informative and very important. The comment about not seeing privatization anywhere in the letter, but you are converting families from public housing to Section 8 housing. And we all know that a lot of the people that are right now in these homeless centers and shelters and places are sitting on Section 8 vouchers waiting to be placed somewhere, but there's nowhere to go. What about the families when I read this letter? I mean, if I greatly appreciate all the work that was done. I sat on this committee for a while. You know, hey, I suffered 6 deaths in my family from COVID. I could not get back to these meetings, but still, it's all in the letter, right? 5,000 residents in Chelsea and Fulton and Elliott, but only about less than 300 at each meeting. And how many actual weigh-ins, comments afterward? I mean, I just am uncomfortable. I was actually hoping, after Chris's concerns, that we would consider tabling it and waiting till a later date to see where we are with funding, to see if we can keep public housing in this area of Manhattan, as opposed to supporting taking public housing from families and sticking them on Section 8 vouchers. Thank you.
So just to be clear, that there are no, the Section 8 will be attached to the apartment. It is not attached to the person. People don't get to leave with their Section 8. It stays in the apartment. So if somebody moves, the next family coming in gets Section 8 and pays 30% of their income.
And what does the family leaving have?
What?
What does the family leaving have?
If today somebody leaves Section 9 public housing of their choice, they can move wherever they want. Today, you don't take your Section 9 public housing subsidy with you. If you decide to move somewhere else, it stays with the apartment, and the next family on the NYCHA waiting list comes in.
Joe, one more thing. These project-based vouchers, Section 8 vouchers, once you live in that apartment, which is project-based Section 8, if you live there for a year, then you can go somewhere else as a regular Section 8 resident. Okay.
If you
have to put a year in that apartment.
That you can take and create a housing choice voucher, but those numbers are limited and it's not guaranteed. So we should not say publicly everyone can pick up and leave with a voucher.
No, but the possibility is there. And beyond that, I agree with Hector on everything he said. You know, we live here, right? I want to take this bird in the hand and use it. Okay. That federal money might be spread out so thinly that we only get a piece of it. That it's not going to make much of a difference at all. All right. There are lots and lots of buildings in the system. We're only talking
Being
about.
I had the floor, I beg to differ, and I said I would think we should wait. Thank you.
You know, I live here. I've suffered through it, and so is Hector. I'm sick of what we've got now. We've got to get new management. We've got to get new infrastructure.
I lived in Chelsea Elliott houses.
Wait a minute. Elzora,
multiple opinions, and that's okay.
Excuse me. This is not turning into a personal debate between Elzora and Mike, okay? You both made your point. If you've got something new you want to add, I'm all ears. But I'm not going to go, I lived here and this is what I want, and I lived here and this is what I want. That we're not going to do. If you've got other points on the letter, I'm happy to hear them. But we're not going to go back and forth about who's right and who's wrong and who lives where. Elzora, do you want to add anything?
I'm done with the floor. Thank you.
All right, Mike, you want to add anything?
Well, that's it for me.
Joe, you want to sum this up?
Yeah. So in the end, I want to say that the thing that distinguishes this whole process for me, having worked with housing, affordable housing and public housing, is if it is 200 or 300 residents, that's more than we've ever seen. But the most important part is it is people who will continue to be involved in the process going forward. And the next stage we're moving into is the RFP. There's an RFP committee with residents and NYCHA, and we expect to get a report from them very soon because we're talking about a possible RFP being issued sometime in the early spring here. And that is a very important thing to move ahead to preserve people's homes. So just want to put this forward. And any other questions to sum up? Anybody
I
else?
just have a question.
Christine?
And in this deal, what is affordable is going to remain affordable forever.
Perpetuity. Not
Perpetuity.
it runs with a 99-year lease.
Right.
Thank you, James.
First, I just want to be clear. I support the letter. I support the immense amount of work that has been put into this. And I want to thank everyone that worked on this. I think the only thing I want to give voice to is that it seems very clear that there's a certain amount of fear here. When we're talking about where people live and raise their families, that fear needs to be addressed somehow. And sometimes just pure information, and you just demonstrated in this meeting how complex this is. Like I'm on a committee and I was having a hard time following it. So maybe we should consider an education piece where, the most important concerns are being addressed in a very simple and straightforward way. And I just wanted to present that as maybe something to think about, because I know that engagement, when we're talking about working families, like, they can't necessarily attend the meeting. It might conflict with their hours. And I know we're working really hard and the people in the working group are working very hard to do that outreach. But at the end of the day, there's still going to be a large percentage of people who are just being told what's going to happen with where they live. So that's what I wanted to suggest. And I yield the floor.
And one of the things I noticed, James, in the public meetings that we had, it was very simple what people's concerns were. And it came through over and over and over. Long-term affordability, no demolition. What's going to happen to me during? What about my family members? So we transcribed all those things session by session, and they actually got incorporated into the rights and protections and changed them to a degree when we got through December. And that to me was the key, that people's concerns were very much day to day. I want to know what happens now.
If I may, and I appreciate that, Joe, and what you're talking about is the hard work of getting policies and protections in place, and I respect that, and that's absolutely the way to go. I'm talking more about, and I hate to put it in this terms, but the emotional resonance of the feeling. It's that feeling like, hey, Joe and the working group are doing all this work, but I wasn't there. This is all way above my specialty and expertise. So how is it explained to me in a way that's straightforward and makes me feel better, which I think is a really important piece in terms of giving people peace of mind. I understand, Joe, that what you're saying, and it's technically right. And
No, I'm not on that technical part. I'm sorry. People raised fears, worries.
No, I'm not saying.
For example, James, somebody said, what happens? Do I have to move out? One person responded, it won't be that difficult. I cut in and said, it's going to be hard. It's going to be dirty. It's going to be impossible. That kind of direct conversation really has helped the whole process.
And no one's questioning that, Joe. And I'm not in any way criticizing your efforts or the efforts of the working group. All I'm suggesting is that if another step could be taken, it would be a step to address the fears of the people who weren't in the room, the fears of the people. And you don't do that in a 20-page letter. You do that through another initiative, which again, is not as complicated as the hard work you've done, and maybe is something a lot more simple. And I don't know what shape that takes, but that's my suggestion. I hope you understand and accept.
If I may really quick, really
Chris,
quickly.
hang on a sec. Chris, hang on a second.
Okay.
Hang on a second, I said.
I said, okay.
Joe, what I think what James is suggesting is basically like an FAQ.
Right, but it's in the point is, believe it or not, that's the next steps with NYCHA. There will be these ongoing sessions and each stage of the development that does exactly that to bring people into it. Our big handicap, and let's be direct about it, was COVID. We would have had much bigger, grand sessions, people yelling, screaming in rooms. We had to do it on Zoom. It's not the same. As people get vaccinated, there will be an ability now to engage more directly. And as you and I both know, James, the face-to-face and the talking back and forth is what makes the difference. It gets a sense of what's happening, and you understand what people's fears are.
I agree. And if I just, one last thing, Lowell, we're dealing with thousands of people. I think that's my concern, is that there are people who, again, whether it be for scheduling purposes, language barriers, timing, they just may not be able to physically be there. So if an FAQ is in the offing, is in the future, I think that's a great first step. But that's sort of the gist of what I was getting at. So thanks, Joe. I appreciate that.
All right, Hector.
Okay.
Hi. Listen, I just wanted to address the outreach that was mentioned here. We've done everything physically possible to reach everybody, to mailers, tabling, the presentations that we've done online, and we will continue to do so. Everybody is welcome to ask questions at these meetings, and I run to folks all the time. The leadership at the Fulton Houses and Elliot Chelsea has been on top of this. So it's an open door policy if anybody has questions. And we give our numbers out, we give our emails, and we get a lot of questions, and we answer a lot of people's inquiries. So it's not like, unfortunately, like was mentioned here, that you put out an invitation to 1,000 people, you'll be lucky if you get 100. If we're fortunate, and it's happened time and time again, even before COVID happened. We had these workshops out at the local schools, and we already had a handful turnout on several different sessions. And unfortunately, that's just the nature of the way things go, as we all know. Okay, we all have lives. We're very busy, and I understand this is a big deal because this is our homes. But we're going to continue doing these meetings at the TA meetings that we're having upcoming. This will be a continual dialogue back and forth. So it doesn't end with us just presenting this and walking away. It doesn't work like that. And an RFP committee, which basically there's been no real solid selections yet. There will be residents who are not even in the work group involved with that as well. Okay, people who basically will apply and say, hey, I'm interested in working on the RFP, the request for proposals, to find a proper developer to do the job right. So there is a back and forth going on all the time. And hopefully with the vaccinations moving forward, we'll have more open discussions and real solid meetings like we should have done, like we could have had hopefully during the COVID experience, but we weren't able to. Okay.
Thank
you,
Hector.
But by the way, Lowell, I forgot, there was an FAQ. And what I want to note for the board members who are not part of the NYCHA meetings, there was simultaneous translation into Russian, Spanish, Mandarin, and Cantonese. I have never been in a more organized discussion like that in my entire career.
All right, Chris, back to you.
Thank you so much. And this was really just a positive build on what James suggested. It's a part of another model that's rather successful in the public-private transfership. It's called the town of Hackney outside of London. I'm sure, Joe, if you're not familiar with it, you will be familiar with it within the next 2 hours. But Hackney has a rather similar RAD PAC program. And I know COVID has limited us in our ability to do outreach. And Hector, I appreciate your outreach as well. Would we be able to study the Hackney model in order to ensure? Thank you, because that is one of the most important things.
By the Citizens Housing and Planning Council on that model. We spent a lot of time on it and really digested it, took elements of it and put it into the plan.
Yeah, so while we're not talking about ownership of residents, I think that model personally, now knowing that has been injected into the process, gives me a lot more ease, Joe. And Joe, you know me personally, you know my mom, you know where my mom's from. She's from Marcy Projects, born and raised before she was 47th Street. So NYCHA means a lot to me and to LeBron and Garces family, and I appreciate that smile there. That smiles a lot of memories there. So thank you so much for doing that research, because it puts me and my family at ease knowing that exists. And Hector and Lowell and everybody else, thank you for entertaining me.
All right, thanks. I didn't want to cut any of this off because this letter is too important, but I think everyone's had their say now and we need to move on. Okay, we have one more item to discuss. It comes from the Social and Racial Justice Task Force. Viren or Katie?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and present it. So this letter is specifically about anti-Asian hate crime and violence that has come up in our district. And in the city, we've obviously already mentioned some of it this evening. The letter is specifically asking for more information about how it is going to be addressed and reduced in our district. And we want to know about what strategies are going to be used to prevent future acts. We've also asked for forceful condemnation of the anti-Asian violence. We've asked for specifically about education programs to educate the public about their rights and protections. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, we also are asking for bystander intervention training. So those are the 4 things that we're asking for in this letter. If there are any questions.
Questions? Twee, do you have access or do you want to just type your question in? Typo in line 24, CB4, not CD4. No, actually, without looking at it, I'm guessing Community Board 4, CB4 is us, CD4 is the community district. So if it's a reference to the district, it's not a typo. Katie, I leave that to you if it's right or wrong. Dale's nodding, so I think I got it right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone else? All right. That closes.
Lowell, there's one quick amendment that was suggested.
Yes,
I think, yes, the new post citation needs to be in quotation marks, and that correction will be made. And that was the last minute suggestion that came from Josephine.
Okay, thank you.
We'll make that change, and I already have forwarded a change to Jesse.
Okay. Any other questions on this letter? All right, that closes the business session. We're going to move to a roll call vote on 11 items. Remember, number 2 has been tabled. Mike and Leslie, are you guys ready? Well, hang on. There's a choice for table and a choice for withdrawn in the title. All right, Jesse, can you clarify how you want everyone to vote on number 2? You want everyone to vote tabled on number 2 on the vote sheet?
Yes, tabled.
Okay, so everyone is voting tabled on number 2 on the vote sheet. Otherwise, I give this over to Mike and to Leslie. I will note that there were people who were here throughout the meeting that either ran into internet troubles or left for other reasons. And they will hand in their vote sheets. So the roll call vote now will not match the final tally. We'll go off of the vote sheets that are submitted, but we'll work from there. So Mike and Leslie, the floor is Jesse.
I saw
yes.
I saw Christine's vote.
Yeah.
Just for clarity's sake though, but people who have left early, internet issues aside, but people who have left early, you have to be present to vote, just similar to like
Christine put her vote in the chat and Jeffrey ran into an internet problem in his office because he texted.
I understand. I'm just saying, just for clarity's sake, for people,
right.
You leaving, or it's just like leaving a full board meeting. You can't just hand me your vote sheet before the conversation and the vote happens.
Right.
You have to be present.
Right. It was those two. It was Christine and Jeffrey that I was talking about. All right, Michael, Leslie, floor is yours.
Okay, same routine here. I'm not going to be able to see you, but I'll be reading your names. So we'll start with Sarah.
Yeah, I'm abstaining on 11 and yes on all others.
Christine.
Christine voted yes on all.
Yeah, she left.
Oh yeah. Gwen, are you with us tonight, Gwen?
Yes, she is. Gwen, can you unmute yourself though? That's the next trick.
Yes. All right. Well, let's skip along to Leslie.
Yes on all.
Viren.
Yes on all, abstain on 11.
Jessica.
Yes on all.
Dale,
Yes on all.
Judith,
I am voting no on 10 and yes on all the rest of them.
Marty Ducat.
Not here.
Okay, Paul. Paul Devlin.
Yeah, yes on all, table 2.
Tina,
Portia?
Yes on all.
Pete Diaz. I know he was here.
PTA writes
You
yes
voted
on
yes
all.
on all in the chat.
Okay, Brett Furfer,
Yes on all.
Elzora,
Yes on all except 11, no.
Wendy,
Yes on all.
David Haloka,
Yes on all.
Frank,
Yes on all.
Josephine.
Not here.
Oh, that's
I
right.
think she had to leave early.
Exactly. Carrie,
Yes on all.
Blake,
Yes on all.
Bert,
Yes on all.
Christopher,
Table 2, extension 11, yes on all. Fun night, you're fully.
Jeffrey,
Jeffrey left. He ran into internet trouble. He got disconnected.
okay, Betty,
Yes on all.
Sarah Mills,
Yes on all. Happy Martin Treat Day, everybody.
myself, yes on all. JD,
Yes on all.
Maria,
Yes on all.
Alan,
Yes on all.
Brad,
Yes on all.
Rhonda's not here. Twee, I guess we'll see that in the
Please
chat.
vote yes to all, no on 5, abstain on 11.
Joe,
Yes on all.
Sabrina,
Yes on all.
Dolores,
Yes on all.
Brian Sokow. Is he here?
He was. I thought he
David
was.
Solnick,
Yes on all.
Katie Stokes,
Yes on all.
Kit Tollerson,
Yes on all.
Marty Treat,
If I read lips correctly, because you're on mute, Marty, you said yes on all.
okay,
Nodding, yes.
Hector,
Yes on all. Table
Rob
2.
Walker. Rob, are you there?
He was here.
Was here.
Yes to all.
James Wallace,
Stanford women, Baylor Bears men, NCAA March Madness, thank you, yes to all.
By the way, now I wait for the vote for James's. I wait for James's vote to see what he's going to say.
I get to stand up for a minute. David Warren,
Yay to all.
Leslie Williams,
Leslie was having internet trouble all time. He could not stay on.
oh gee, Colin Wright,
Yes to all.
Lowell,
Yes to all.
and is Gwen back?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
wonderful. This makes my night.
Yes to all.
Okay. I think we got them all, yeah?
All right.
As best as we can.
All right. Is there any new business to attend to?
Lowell, I have one quick thing.
Go ahead, Brad.
In regards to the public comment, one of the speakers was looking for space in commercial areas, and we fight all the time for affordable housing, but in our district, we have nothing but commercial going up. And we've been talking about it for years, that there should be a carve out for some public and affordable commercial space. So I just want to put it out there, but I don't know why it can't be incorporated. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else have anything they want to raise?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. All those in favor, have a great night.
Good night.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
I love you all.